This is Atomic Shinobi and today I'm going to narrate second part of What If Naruto was saved by Obito and joined Akatsuki. If you enjoy this video, please like, share and subscribe to this channel, and for more exclusive and spicy content, follow me on Patreon. Link is in the description below. Now wasting no more time, let's start the story.
Fu opened her eyes and began to flutter them. She saw an older version of the blonde boy when she opened her eyes fully, but he had less baby fat on his face and his left side was crushed, with the exception of his cheek, which had all of his whisker marks intact. Fu called out the blonde's name, Naruto. And the boy grinned. Fu put her hand on Naruto's scarred face. Startled by his appearance, Fu asked, "What happened to you?" Naruto remarked, "It's a long story." Mamoru, who was watching, yipped to his partner to alert him to an approaching figure. Naruto put on his demonic looking mask after nodding. Hashi said, "You might want to hang on." Fu put her arms around Hashi's neck and nodded. The tree that Hashi and Mamoru were hiding behind was destroyed when they abruptly leapt high into the air to avoid being struck by Shueishi's enormous war hammer. Mamoru and Hashi landed far from the armored giant, glaring at him. Shueishi pointed his war hammer at Hashi and yelled, "Next time, make sure I'm dead. Now hand over the Jinchuriki with it." "Only when hell freezes over, and I highly doubt that day will ever come," Hashi replied. Wrong answer. Shueishi added chakra to his warhammer and held it high in the air. "Jasho Chikyu Nadare no Jutsu," shouted Shueishi, slamming his hammer into the ground. The ground in front of Shueishi began to rise and fracture, sending a massive wave of rocks and dirt directly in the direction of Hashi and the others. Mamoru and Hashi leapt into the air. Shueishi grinned menacingly behind his mask and said, "He can avoid it, but the sharp and broken rocks will pierce their skin and break their bones when they land." Hashi already had an idea as they began to descend. Hashi said, "Mamoru, take my hand," to his partner. When Mamoru nodded, the small fox kid reached out and let Hashi take hold of it. Then Hashi put the fox kid on Fu. "No, hold on." Hashi then grasped Fu with his forearms, allowing him to create a cross seal with his hands. Hashi cried, "Kage Bushin no Jutsu." Then, far to their right, a clone of Hashi emerged. After sending wind chakra to his arms, Hashi hurled Mamoru and Fu at the clone. She held the fox kid tightly to prevent him from falling, and Fu screamed. The teenage girl and fox kid were successfully taken by the clone. "I'll kill you for this, Naruto," exclaimed Fu. Clone Hashi remarked, "Glad you're okay too, Fu." With his father's Hiraishin seal on it, the real Hashi had drawn one of his unique pronged kunai. After adding wind chakra, he hurled a blow in Shueishi's direction. Shueishi's helmet was sliced, leaving a gash, before the kunai zipped past him. Then a yellow flash engulfed Hashi, causing Fu and Shueishi's eyes to enlarge. "No way." Both of them thought in disbelief. Then Hashi emerged from behind Shueishi. With a sweep kick to Shusahi's legs, the masked shinobi knocked him to the ground and sent wind chakra to his feet. After rolling out of the way of the falling giant, Hash sent an axe kick at Shueishi's helmet with the same foot he used to sweep kick him, causing the giant to scream in pain as he landed. Then Hashi leapt back and assumed a combat stance. "That fucking brat." In his mind, Hashi yelled. Fortunately for him, the helmet absorbed part of the chakra that increased the force of the blow, but Hashi's foot crushed the right side of the helmet, crushing his eye and rendering it useless. Shueishi rolled onto his front side and used his hammer as a staff to help him stand. His mask's right side was dented and blood seeped out. "I'll crush him." Shueishi was furious and furious. Then, sensing that he would likely need to employ some aikido, Hashi collected wind chakra into his hands. Shueishi used his one good eye to glare at him from behind his mask. Then he used just one hand to make a series of hand signals. The fact that someone other than Haku actually did this astounded Hashi. After completing his hand seals, Shueishi stomped the ground, causing enormous rocks to emerge. When Hashi noticed that the rocks Shueishi had called forth were floating all around him, his eyes grew wide. "How on earth is he doing that?" Hashi marveled at the jutsu. Shueishi exclaimed, "Shikyu Shikai no Justu," orbiting earth technique. Shueishi swung his warhammer at the rock that was floating in front of him after firmly grasping the handle with both hands. The rock sped in Hashi's direction as soon as the hammer struck it. After avoiding it, Hashi saw another one hurtling in his direction. Hashi continued to dodge the rocks that Shueishi was pelting at him. After shouting, "Jasho Chikyu Nadare no Jutsu," and raising his warhammer high in the air, Shueishi used another of his earth-based avalanche techniques by slamming it down. Hashi snatched up his pronged kunai and leapt into the air, barely avoiding the jutsu. After Shuichi completed a series of hand signals, the armored giant exclaimed, Doden. Dosakiryu. A dragon made of earth emerged from the earth and headed in Hashi's direction. Watching the battle with Mamoru and the Hashi clone, Fu became instantly concerned for the boy and feared that the jutsu would strike him when they saw the earth dragon approaching Hashi. Naruto. Fu exclaimed his true name when she realized the jutsu was going to strike him. Mamoru, however, remained composed. He had faith in his partner. Best friend and knew Naruto wouldn't be defeated in this manner. The masked shinobi swiftly performed a series of hand signals as the earth dragon drew closer to Hashi. As he inhaled a large amount of air and then blew it out, creating a harsh wind that not only sent a bullet of air in one direction but also sent Hashi in the opposite direction, Hashi exclaimed, Futon. Renkuden. Wind release. Drilling air bullet. This helped him avoid the earth dragon that sped past him. Yeah. Go Naruto. Fu applauded the blonde wearing a mask. When his best friend thought quickly, Mamoru nodded. Knowing that his creator would outsmart his opponent, the Hashi clone grinned beneath his mask. Damn bastard. As he watched Hashi land atop a tree, Shuichi pondered. Then he noticed that Hashi was prepared to hurl his kunai once more. Oh no, you're not going to win this time, brat. Hashi crossed his arms in an X block and shouted in his head. Behind his mask, Hashi simply grinned. Before hurling the kunai at Shuichi, he collected wind chakra at his feet. Shuichi smiled as the kunai struck the armored giant's X block as it flew directly at him. He dropped his arms and a yellow flash of Hashi materialized in front of him. In front of Shuichi, Hashi was in the air, off the ground. Hashi used his momentum to grab Shuichi's hammer and then kicked him twice in the torso, sending Shuichi flying backward and landing on the ground. Hashi remained where he was, holding the warhammer. Shuichi sat up, his lone eye glaring at the masked shinobi. He said, Give that back. After a brief moment of standing there, Hashi surrounded himself with wind chakra. A difficult task for him. Hashi swiftly whirled around and let go of the hammer, sending it far from the battlefield as the wind chakra surrounded him. Then Hashi turned to Shuichi. Hashi asked Shuichi, You want it? Then he gestured behind him with his thumb. Go get it. After yelling a fierce battle cry, Shuichi ran over to Hashi and swung his fist at him. Hashi swiftly applied wind chakra to his forearms and hands. The armored giant missed as the masked shinobi linked his forearm with Shuichi's and pushed it aside as the fist approached Hashi's face. Shuichi then attempted to uppercut Hashi, but Hashi sidestepped the blow and used the advantage Shuichi had given him to send a wind-powered fist directly below Shuichi's armpit, successfully sending him back while breaking one of his ribs and denting his armor. Shuichi kicked Hashi after he groaned and recoiled from the pain, but Hashi sidestepped and then grabbed Shuichi's leg, throwing him to the ground with the aid of his wind chakra. After gathering wind chakra in his feet and leaping high into the air, Hashi called forth a cage bushin to seize his arm and launch him directly in Shuichi's direction. He aimed both of his legs at Shuichi as he shot toward her, then slammed them into the area of Shuichi's torso. Shuichi coughed up blood due to the strength of the additional wind chakra. Seemingly defeated, Shuichi lay there with blood trickling down his mask. Fu was cheering for Naruto from a distance, joyfully leaping into the air. Hooray for Naruto, the strongest shinobi around, woohoo! Fu enthusiastically and respectfully applauded the blonde. Mamoru grinned at his best friend's triumph as the earlier clone vanished. As Hashi approached them, Shuichi abruptly stood up and ran towards him. Hashi swiftly turned and sent wind chakra to his arm, blocking the blow with his forearm. However, he was unable to send enough wind chakra, so he only felt a small portion of the punch's pain, which was so intense that it cracked Hashi's bone. After letting out a painful groan, Hashi saw Shuichi complete a hand signal. Doden. Dosakiryu. Cried Shuichi. Then, Hashi was hit by the earth beneath him, which shot at him and hit him. Hashi was hardly conscious as the jutsu's power and intensity propelled him skyward. Then Shuichi leapt into the air and appeared above Hashi. His war hammer suddenly flew directly at the two. When his war hammer came within reach, Shuichi seized it and directed chakra towards it. Shuichi yelled, Game over, brat, as he struck Hashi with the hammer, sending the masked shinobi sprawling to the chilly ground. Fu gaped at what had just transpired. Shuichi began to approach the unconscious child after landing a distance away from Hashi, but he was abruptly struck by a fireball. After being pushed back a little, Shuichi glared at the person who had sent the fireball in response to an unexpected sight. The young kidling, who appeared to be composed of golden flames and was glaring at Shuichi, was standing in front of the fox kit from earlier. Shuichi exclaimed. What, now a little bitty fox kid is going to stand in my way? Before laughing uncontrollably. After that, Mamoru leapt into the air and used his Kyuubi chakra to swiftly roll in the air, transforming into a living ball of fire. He then used the chakra to launch himself directly at Shuichi. Shuichi kept laughing, but as soon as he felt the pain of being struck by the strong blow, he stopped and skidded back. Shuichi noticed that his torso armor was cracked. Mamoru's use of a chakra was so powerful that it actually damaged the armor rather than absorbing it. The small golden flaming fox kid gave Shuichi a glare in return. Shuichi said threateningly, "You're going to regret that, you little fleabag." Then, with a roar, Shuichi lifted his warhammer high in the air and slammed it down on the fox kid, but the kidling had disappeared in a flash of yellow. Where on earth did that tiny rat disappear to? Shuichi pondered. The golden fox kid was on top of his head when he saw a golden tail sway over his head. Then Shuichi slammed his hammer over his head, but the kid managed to avoid it with ease. Shuichi then collapsed to the ground due to a severe headache. Mamoru's expression was one of sweat droplets as he gazed at the armored giant. Mamoru thought, I can't believe how stupid this guy is. Then Shuichi began to rise from the floor. Shuichi slammed his hammer down on the fox and yelled, "Okay, now you are really starting to piss me off, you little runt." But the little kid disappeared once more in a golden flash. Shuichi noticed the fox kid behind him and glanced around for it. Shuichi shouted, "Hold still, you runt," and slammed his hammer down once more in an attempt to strike the fox kid, but the kid evaded him once more. Her Biju began speaking to her as Fu watched with terrified eyes. Speaking to his Jinchuriki, Shomei asked, "Fu-chan, what are you doing?" After emerging from her terrified daze, Fu began to pay attention to her Biju. "Hurry up and save your friend, while the kid has the metal moron distracted," Shomei stated to her. Fu said, "But what can I do?" To her Biju, "What are you talking about?" "You're Ekunoichi, you know exactly what to do," Shomei replied. The realization that her Biju genuinely had faith in her made Fu flush. Shomei said, "Here, allow me to help." Fu felt weird all of a sudden as something emerged from her back and took shape. She noticed that she had developed a pair of insect wings when she looked behind herself. Then the wings began to flap quickly, lifting Fu off the ground and into the air. Fu was incredulous. "She's in the air. She's really taking off." Fu was grinning broadly. "Now let's go save your friend," exclaimed Shomei enthusiastically. "Yeah," Fu replied as she swiftly flew in the direction of the blonde wearing a mask. Her wings felt natural to her, and she quickly adapted to them. Fu then took Hashi in his arms and took off. Mamoru grinned as he followed Fu and Hashi as they took off. Shuichi shouted, "Hey, where are you going, coward?" Then he realized Hashi had also vanished. "Oh, goddammit," swore Shuichi. Fu was holding Naruto in her arms after landing far away from that metal madman. In order to improve his breathing, she removed his Hashi mask. She gave him a hopeful look, hoping he would wake up and do something else. Love. Mamoru was watching, but he was also observing Fu and his best friend. Whatever Naruto had done in Fu's mindscape, it appears that in addition to helping her with her Biju and possibly persuading her to join Akatsuki, he had also won her respect, affection, and trust. At that, Mamoru grinned. "Naruto, you really have a way with people," Mamoru thought. Then Mamoru felt Shuichi approaching. Mamoru approached Fu and gave her a yap. Fu gave him a determined look and said, "I can't understand you, but I got an idea of what you're saying." Fu put Naruto on her back and said, "I'm ready." Mamoru nodded and said, "First, let's put Naruto someplace safer." Fu gazed at Naruto's face with love and sadness as she began to leave to take him somewhere safe. As a single tear fell from her eye, Fu thought, "Naruto, this might be it for me, but if it's to keep you safe, then I'll be okay with that. I appreciate everything you've done for me in such a short period of time. I'm grateful, Naruto.kun." Shuichi was trekking all the way to where he last felt the fox kid's chakra signature. Despite his strength, it was simple to identify the special chakra he employed. Shuichi was moving forward when all of a sudden a dazzlingly bright substance enveloped him. Shuichi noticed some of the material on one of his shoulder guards. He put his hand on it and studied it intently with his one eye. "Powder?" asked Shuichi. Fu whispered the name of her jutsu, Hiden. Rinpungakure no Jutsu. Secret, hiding in scale powder technique. Shuichi began to cautiously move around when he was struck across the helmet by what appeared to be the same attack that had previously struck him from the fox kit. Shuichi attempted to sense for him, but his senses were being confused by another chakra signature that was flying around. The small fox kit that covered Shuishi's armor continued to strike him all over. "Damn little rat!" exclaimed Shuishi. Then he raised his warhammer in the air after pumping chakra into it. Josho. But he was hard. Landed in the torso before he could finish his jutsu. He actually lost his grip on his hammer due to the force of the blow. The armor on his torso cracked even more as he was flung skiddingly to the ground. Then Shuishi heard something fly in his direction. He saw a silhouette descending on him as he looked straight up. Fu screamed, "Soko Panchi," and threw her fist directly at Shuishi. Her arm appeared to be composed entirely of steel. Just before Fu's fist struck his chest, Shuishi swore, "Oh shit." The force of the blow was so great that it penetrated his armor. Shuishi coughed up blood that seeped out of his armor and stained its interior. After extracting her first from the opening in his armor, Fu sent chakra to her other arm and began striking Shuishi in the face while wearing a mask. Shuishi indicated his war hammer with his hand. The enormous hammer began to move as if it were attached to Shuishi. When Shuishi waved his hand in front of himself, the war hammer suddenly came flying at him, smashing Fu in the back and sending her flying away. As it did its job, Shuishi reached for his hammer and used it to help him stand again. "Not bad, you little bitch. You're just lucky that I need you alive," Shuishi replied. Then, Shuishi successfully struck Mamoru with his hammer from behind, sending him flying into a tree. Since Fu didn't yet know Mamoru's name, she called him by his nickname, Kid.Kun. As the small fox kit fell to the chilly ground, where he transformed back and suffered severe injuries, Fu hurried over to Mamoru, but before she could reach him, Shuishi materialized and swung his hammer at her. Fu then flipped over him and kicked him in the back of the head. Fu rushed over to Mamoru, knelt down in front of him, picked him up, and held him close to her. Fu began to cry as she held the small, injured fox kit and said, "Kit, I'm so sorry." Shuishi approached them while holding his hammer firmly and said, "Oh, don't worry about him." Shuishi stopped in front of them and said, "After I crush him, I'll just take you away, and then after we're done with you, you can make it up to him, in hell." Then, Mamoru opened his eyes slightly and noticed Shuishi standing before them. The small fox kit escaped Fu's grasp, landed on the ground, and let out a whine. "Kit." Fu called out his name upon witnessing his agony. Mamoru merely attempted to get up and move in Shuishi's direction, but he simply collapsed back onto the ground. "Kit, stop," Fu said, her eyes welling with tears, but the small fox kid persisted in attempting to stand up and fight. Fu begged, "Please, Kit, just stop." But the fox kid would not give up. Mamoru was too hurt to fight, but he kept trying to get back up. Shuishi simply laughed at what she saw. Shuishi looked down at the wounded kitling and asked, "Not so tough now, are you?" Even though Mamoru knew it would be ineffective, he persisted in trying to bite Shuishi's armored foot. Shuishi grinned smugly and remarked, "Ah, now isn't that cute? You sure are a fighter." Then, as he was ready to kick Mamoru, Shuishi withdrew his foot. "No," exclaimed Fu. Fu swiftly grabbed Mamoru to protect him from the blow. Fu was severely hurt when Shuishi kicked her back into the tree. Mamoru attempted to break free of her hold once more in an attempt to defend her, but Fu simply held him, refusing to let him go. Fu remarked, "No, Kit. That's enough." Mamoru wept bitterly at not being able to live up to his reputation. With tears of pride and sorrow for the little courageous fox Kit, Fu said, "Don't cry, Kit. You tried your best, and I am so thankful for you doing so." Shuishi then raised his war hammer high in the air and said, "It's time for bed, demon girl. Don't worry. You can visit him and your dear parents later." Fu clenched her eyes shut and embraced Mamoru. As the enormous hammer struck her, Fu thought, "I'm sorry, Naruto.Kun." A few minutes before Naruto was in his mindscape when he woke up. The ankle high water level has significantly decreased over time, and there are now only small puddles scattered throughout the area. Additionally, flowers and grass started to appear all around the area. Since joining Akatsuki, everything has been going well for him. He met other Jinchuriki, was surrounded by people who genuinely cared about him, became best friends with Kurama, and now had his parents inside of him. His mindscape was beginning to transform from something dark to something he was certain would be beautiful because things were going so well for him. Kurama remarked behind Naruto, "Glad to see you're not dead yet, Kit." Naruto saw the enormous Fox King and his parents when he turned around. As Naruto rose from the ground, he said, "Mom, Dad, you're all right." Minato remarked, "Of course we are. We can't get killed, remember?" Sadly, when he and Kushina returned to Naruto after dispelling, they witnessed their son being struck by a potent earth jutsu. Kushina yelled, "Naruto.Kun, you've got to wake up and kick that armored lunkhead's ass." Databane. With fiery eyes. Minato simply laughed and perspired a little at his wife's quirky nature. He got me pretty bad, I'm going to need some help, said Naruto. Minato, who truly wanted to support his son in battle, said sorrowfully, sorry Naruto, we used up our portion of Kurama's chakra to buy you some time. I'm afraid you're on your own now. Damn it, swore Naruto. Language, Kushina reprimanded her son. Fearing his mother's harsh gaze, Naruto looked to the ground and said, sorry mom. Minato remarked, wait, you cursed before Naruto did. So? Kushina asked, giving her husband a fierce look. Minato was in serious trouble as he said, so, since he's already an assassin and seen as an adult already, shouldn't he be free to do as he pleases? Minato screamed in pain as Kushina grabbed his shoulder and crushed it. Then, with a frighteningly angry expression, she put Minato in a headlock. Whose side are you on, Baka? Are you suggesting that our child should go and get a girl pregnant? Kushina yelled at her husband, clearly irritated. No, Kushina. Chan, I'm suggesting that he old enough to swear, honest. Minato sobbed while his wife was choking him to death. Kushina shouted at her husband, shut up Minato. Baka? The sight made Naruto want to smile because it made him think of Sakura and himself, but he had to concentrate in order to wake up and save Fu and Mamoru from that armored wacko. Kurama called out to Naruto, Kit. Naruto admired his friend and Biju. Chome had contacted me through a mental link. Fu and Mamoru are fighting that metal-headed freak, and it's not looking too good. What? Exclaimed Naruto. I got to save them, Naruto exclaimed, turning to face the Biju King. Naruto said, Kurama, I am asking, may I please use your power? Kurama grinned and remarked, you already got it, Kit. No need to ask permission. After giving a nod, Naruto disappeared and reappeared in the world. Kushina proudly cried, that's my Sochi, while continuing to choke Minato in her headlock. Kurama simply grinned amusedly and shook his head at the scene. Fu and Mamoru braced themselves for the agony that lay ahead as Shueishi's hammer descended straight down to crush them. Shueishi saw screams of pain and the absence of metal meeting flesh as the hammer crashed down. When Shueishi raised his hammer, he saw that no bodies were present. Then, from the top of a tree to his left, Shueishi recognized the Hug Chakra signature. When Shueishi looked up, he saw a young adolescent boy with black and golden flame tattoos all over his body, as well as black patterns on his left side that gave the impression that he had previously been crushed. Shueishi recognized the masked jerk he was battling as that teenager. With great relief and joy, Fu gazed up at the golden, flamed boy. Naruto.kun. Fu joyfully called the teenage boy by name. Naruto grinned as he looked down at her and said, glad to see you're still alright Fu. Chan. The golden boy noticed Mamoru's terrible state as he turned to face his fox companion. Naruto was upset to see his best friend in this state. With new tears streaming from her eyes, Fu said, I'm sorry Naruto. I tried to help as much as I could, but I couldn't keep him from getting hurt. Naruto kept staring at the wounded fox kid. As she sobbed, Fu held the small fox kid closer to her and said, you should be very proud though, he was so brave, he risked his life for you and me, and he was still trying to fight, even though he knew he couldn't anymore. He's a true protector. Naruto replied, I know. Fu raised his gaze to the golden boy. With an authentic smile, Naruto remarked, after all, that's why I named him Mamoru. Shueishi shouted, Josho Chikyu Nadare no Jutsu, as he slammed his hammer down, forming his enormous wave of broken and ragged rocks. He felt the boy's chakra signature behind him as his jutsu came to an end, but he could not see the three were gone. Quickly turning around, Shueishi saw the golden boy with the fox and Nanbi Jinchuriki in tow. After setting Fu down on a tree, the boy knelt down and touched Mamoru. A portion of the golden flames that enveloped Naruto had entered Mamoru's body. Kurama's chakra will heal him. Just stay here while I take care of this guy, said Naruto. Fu nodded while she kept the small fox kid in her arms. Then Naruto got to his feet and faced away from her. Fu glanced up at the boy with the golden flame and said, oh, and Fu. With a sincere smile, Naruto turned to face Fu. I'm really proud of you, and I'm happy that you and Chome are friends. Naruto replied. At what he said, Fu flushed and smiled back at Naruto. The boy with golden flames turned to face Shueishi, who appeared unfazed by Naruto's increased strength. So what are you going to do now, he began, but before he could say another word, Shueishi was thrown backwards by a powerful blow to his bare chest. After grabbing Shueishi with chakra arms, Naruto began slamming him to the ground repeatedly. The armor was now proving to be useless because the chakra was so strong and kept coming. Naruto removed Shueishi's warhammer and placed it in his hands using one of his chakra hands. Shuichi landed hard on the ground, his body hurting. Abruptly, Naruto materialized above him, developed wind chakra into the enormous hammer, and then struck him with it. He coughed up more blood as a result of the force of the winds that were released upon impact. The attack was so severe that it had further broken his armor around his torso. Naruto thought, damn, this hammer's heavy, but one more attack like that and it's over for this bastard. Then he built wind chakra into the hammer and raised it high in the air using all of his strength. Shuichi instantly raised his hand in the air when he realized Naruto was about to launch the same attack once more. The hammer abruptly slipped out of Naruto's grasp and began to float. Naruto was stunned and perplexed by what he saw. How on earth is he doing that? Naruto pondered. Shuichi suddenly grabbed Naruto by the throat. Shuichi got to his feet and lifted Naruto into the air. As he grasped his warhammer, Shuichi remarked, I bet you've been wondering how I am able to control my warhammer in such a way. You see, I forged the hammer myself, and in the process, I added my blood into the mix. Naruto was told by Shuichi. Curious as to why he would do so, Naruto questioned, why? You see, chakra is a continuous flow, it flows in our bodies, especially in our blood. Did you know that we can control our blood, even when it is spilled? Shuichi gave a lecture to Naruto. Since my blood exists within my hammer, it is also a part of me. I can control it with my chakra to either retract or repel it, just like a magnet. Shuichi clarified for the golden boy. In fact, Naruto was impressed by Shuichi's work. It inspired him. Shuichi said, now it's time for you to meet your maker. With his hammer raised, Shuichi prepared to smash Naruto's skull in. Kurama shouted, Naruto, cut his arm off, inside Naruto's head. But his armor. Just do it, Kurama shouted. Naruto swiftly pulled out his trench knife because he had complete faith in the Biju King. Naruto swiftly created a wind blade by pumping his wind chakra into it. Then, he swiftly raised his wind blade and hurled it toward Shuichi's arms. His hammer and Shuichi's forearm had drifted to the side. The pain of losing half of his arm caused Shuichi to scream in agony. The armored giant then let go of Shuichi after Naruto delivered a double kick to his face. Naruto smiled as he leapt back. I understand now, Naruto thought, grinning broadly. Shuichi stared in disbelief at his arm. But my armor is supposed to, Shuichi said, realizing the issue. My armor, Shuichi said, glancing at the enormous, gaping hole in his torso armor. When Shuichi reached for his hammer, Naruto swiftly flashed it, grabbed it, and then sent an upswing to him. He said if my torso armor was too damaged then the chakra absorption won't work anymore. Shuichi's mask and helmet flew off his head when the hammer struck him, exposing a man who appeared to be in his late 20s, with cheekbones and shoulder-length brunette hair. Naruto began charging up a Rasengan while Shuichi was stunned by the blow. A normal Rasengan was 3 times smaller than this one. Naruto yelled, take this, and charged Shuichi. Naruto yelled the name of his jutsu, Odama Rasengan. Shuichi's torso was struck by Naruto's massive spiraling chakra sphere. The strength and force of the jutsu then launched Shuichi into the air, causing him to crash through multiple trees. Shuichi lay there, defeated, as he passed through the last tree. After turning off Kyuubi mode, Naruto headed over to Fu and Mamoru. Naruto-kun, you did it, Fu joyfully cried. Before them, Naruto knelt down and inquired, how's Mamoru? Mamoru began to open his eyes as if on cue, and when he looked up, his best friend was grinning at him. Naruto joked, hey there sleeping beauty, had a nice nap? Unable to look his friend in the eye, Mamoru simply looked down. Naruto's expression turned worried when he saw that his friend was unhappy. What's wrong? Inquired Naruto. Mamoru began to yip. Bewildered, Naruto questioned, what do you mean you failed me? Once more, Mamoru yipped. Mamoru. Naruto grabbed the fox kid out of Fu's grasp and gave him a direct look. You shouldn't feel that way about yourself. You saved my life, protected Fu, and still refused to give up when the odds were against you. I am sincerely proud of you, and you have shown today that you deserve to be named Mamoru. His best friend's words made Mamoru smile broadly. Then Mamoru continued to yip. Naruto remarked, I should be the one to thank you. Then Naruto gave his best friend a hug. Naruto said, I love you Mamoru. The blonde laughed a little as Mamoru began licking Naruto's face tenderly. Naruto laughed at the fox's behavior and remarked, cut it out, ha, ha, that tickles, ha, ha, ha. Fu grinned, glad to see they were both doing well. Naruto attracted the attention of the girl with mint green hair by saying her name, Fu. About the offer I gave you earlier, about joining the Akatsuki. Naruto replied. Fu inquired. Will you be there? Naruto replied with a nod. Fu replied, then I'll gladly join. Then Naruto's face lit up with a broad smile. Yada! Naruto exclaimed, raising his fist. After realizing that he had become overly excited once more, Naruto tried to calm down and act composed. Naruto's cheeks turned pink as he said, I mean, that's good. Mamoru grinned and Fu laughed at what Naruto had done. He was a wonderful man. Naruto gave the two a smile, but as soon as he sensed trouble, his eyes widened. With haste, Naruto handed Mamoru to Fu and retrieved his two trench knives. He turned around and crossed them as they caught the handle of the war hammer that nearly struck him. With wide eyes, Fu and Mamoru noticed that Shuichi was once more upright, the blunt end of his hammer inches from Naruto's face. Shuichi remarked, nice reflexes. Naruto merely remained silent while scowling at Shuichi. So this is what you look like without those masks of yours. Gotta say, can't blame you for hiding something so ugly. Shuichi grinned. Naruto simply used a wind-powered kick to push Shuichi's hammer away. Shuichi halted his retreat and gave Naruto a fierce look. Before we finish this, tell me, how were you able to send powerful strikes my way, when my armor was clearly impenetrable from regular attacks? Shuichi responded. Well, I see no harm in telling you since you're about to die anyway. Naruto replied. You see, my affinity is wind, and as I looked through the scrolls for wind just you, I realized that wind could be used in countless ways. Make one faster, making their attacks deadly by adding wind to their hands and feet, giving them more force behind it, and they can chop through wood and body parts like butter, make someone jump high up to the atmosphere. The list goes on, but in order to make my attacks that strong in the first place, I had to train my body extensively in chakra control in order to use it in such ways, and truth be told I'm actually pretty sloppy in using them as such. Naruto clarified. His explanation caused Shuichi and Fu's jaws to drop. He's a genius. Gaining more respect for Naruto, Fu thought. The boy's intelligence and strength astounded Shuichi. He is a worthy opponent. Shuichi said, I'll admit kid, you're pretty strong. Shuichi grinned and said, but I'm still standing. A voice said, not for long. Shuichi's legs were abruptly severed in a single swift motion. Shuichi dropped to the ground, but he managed to stay upright by using his war hammer. His eyes widened when he saw two very dangerous characters when he looked up. Where have you guys been? Naruto inquired of the newcomers. One simply smiled toothily at him, and the other simply looked at him impassively and without emotion. Fu's eyes widened in terror as she gazed at the two. No way, Fu thought startledly. Keeping his cool, Itachi asked, getting into trouble as usual? Naruto answered, it's a habit. With a toothy smile, Kisame remarked, and I see you disobey Obito's orders and stopped wearing your mask. Tisk, tisk, tisk. Naruto grinned and held up his demon mask, asking, oh, you mean this? I just considered that you'd probably need it more than I do, fish face. Naruto laughed. Itachi had a slight smirk on his face, Mamoru snickered, and Kisame had an angry expression on his face, but Fu couldn't help but laugh at what Naruto had said. Shuichi gave Naruto a disbelieving glance and even insulted. The Kisame Hoshigaki. Kid has balls, Shuichi reflected. Naruto uttered the name of the Uchiha, Itachi. Itachi nodded, understanding exactly what Naruto required of him. Using his strong dojutsu, Itachi uttered, Mangekyo Sharingan. Shuichi looked directly into the Konoha Nin's eyes. After a few moments, Shuichi let go of air he was unaware he was holding. Itachi shut his eyes, then opened them again to show his typical Sharingan. Itachi told the others, apparently Orochimaru is collecting Jinchuriki. Both Kisame and Naruto remained silent, with the latter squinting his eyes. Orochimaru. Teme following Biju. Why? I assumed that getting the Sharingan was his sole objective. Naruto pondered. The Habi-Sanin wants to take her Biju, and the stories she had heard about him made her extremely afraid. Fu's eyes were filled with fear. Naruto created a wind sword by pumping chakra into one of his trench knives, saying, now that we have our intel. Naruto approached Shuichi and said, there's only one thing left to do. With his demon mask covering his face, Naruto said, before you die, I gotta say, you were one hell of an opponent. Shuichi laughed, you too kid. You too. Shuichi's last sight was Hashi's red, glowing eyes piercing his soul as Naruto swiftly severed his head. Blood was dripping from the armor fighter's headless body as it had fallen to the ground. Naruto had already removed his mask, replaced it with a straw hat atop his head and his lower half mask. Before turning to face Fu, Naruto tipped his hat. Naruto hid his face from the girl with the mint green hair by crouching down in front of her while continuing to tip his hat. Naruto inquired, "Do you need to get anything from the village?" In response, Fu simply shook her head. Then Naruto's hat came up, revealing his unmasked, smiling face. Naruto grinned broadly and said, "Well then, it's time we get moving, yeah?" Fu simply nodded and returned the smile. Itachi, Kisame, Fu, and Naruto were leaping from tree to tree while Mamoru was wrapped in a cloak. After learning from Naruto that the Hachibi vessel and the Nibi vessel were already two other Jinchuriki in the group, Fu was eager to join the Akatsuki. Naruto stopped on a branch after smelling something while they were jumping from tree to tree. The others paused, turning back to him. Fu questioned, "What's wrong, Naruto-kun?" Naruto remarked, "It couldn't be." As the two senior Akatsuki members continued to stare at him, Fu cocked her head in perplexity. Abruptly, Naruto accelerated in a different direction. "Naruto!" Fu yelled the name of the blonde wearing a mask. Naruto was followed by Fu, who was followed by Itachi and Kisame. Naruto thought about what he hoped it was after smelling something that smelled like burning rock. When Naruto arrived at a clearing, he also noticed rumble. He ran all the way to the rumble and discovered a meteorite in a huge hole. The sight left Naruto stunned, but then a huge smile spread across his face. Then, as his excitement grew, Naruto began to tremble until... "Yada!" exclaimed Naruto, leaping into the air as his excitement exploded. Naruto was jumping with excitement when Fu and the other two Akatsuki members arrived. Hearing the excitement of his best friend, Mamoru stuck his head out and saw a meteorite, which clarified everything. Itachi, Kisame, and Fu approached Naruto to examine the meteorite. Kisame remarked, "You're excited over a rock? Boy, how pathetic." After stopping his joyous jumping, Naruto narrowed his eyes and faced Kisame. Naruto remarked, "And you call yourself a swordsman?" Itachi arched an eyebrow, and Fu gave Naruto a disbelieving look. Kisame, on the other hand, was offended by the remark and had a furious expression on his face, though he wasn't sure where Naruto got the idea. With his gloved hand, Naruto slid down to the enormous space rock and touched it. Naruto asked, "Do you know what this is?" Kisame, still perplexed as to why he was so thrilled, remarked, It's a rock, kid." "Not just any rock. It's a meteorite," Naruto proudly exclaimed. Thanks to Chome, Fu developed wings and descended alongside Naruto. "What's so important about a meteorite, Naruto-kun?" Fu responded. Naruto told his fellow Jinchuriki, "Ever since I had been training to become an assassin for the Akatsuki, I got into Kenjutsu, and one thing I really wanted to do is make my very own sword." Itachi remarked, "I see. Meteorites have metal within them." "Exactly. It's the perfect material to create my sword," said Naruto. A medium-sized scroll was removed by Naruto, who laid it on the ground and opened it. After the scroll was opened, a larger scroll emerged, which you carry on your back. Next, Naruto created his trademark seal, Kage Bushin no Jutsu. Naruto exclaimed, utilizing his trademark jutsu. The meteorite was then surrounded by clones, which collectively raised it. After unraveling his scroll, Naruto rolled it beneath the meteorite. The original Naruto sealed the meteorite into the scroll after the clones carefully set it down, relieved to no longer have to hold the heavy rock. After releasing his jutsu, Naruto rolled up the scroll and sealed it back into the smaller container. Naruto pocketed the scroll and said, "Okay, now we can head back to HQ." Now returning to the Akatsuki headquarters, the three nodded. At last, Naruto and the others arrived at the base to meet Yugito Ni, the Nibi Jinchuriki, Obito, Yahiko, Konan, and Killer B, who had unzipped his Akatsuki cloak. Yugito has dark eyes, taut bandages, and long, straight blonde hair. She was dressed in the organization's cloak, which was slightly zipped down to show off her short, sleeved black and purple blouse with cloud patterned designs on it, black pants with cloud patterned designs, purple fingerless gloves, and a chain of blue beads wound around her left hand. In addition, she has bandages on her arms and legs, a red belt around her waist, a sandal, a kumo forehead protector, and a kunai holster strapped around her right thigh. Naruto grinned broadly and asked, "Hey, anyone missed me?" Konan grinned and replied, "Not really." With a smirk on his face, Naruto shook his head and patted his heart, saying, "You cut me deep, Konan-chan." With a gentle grasp of Fu's hand, Naruto led her to the others, saying, "Anyway, mission accomplished. Everyone, meet Fu, Chome's Jinchuriki." Sheepishly, Fu said, hi. Then Conan approached Fu and gave her a hug. Conan pulled away from the young Jinchuriki girl and remarked, glad to see there's another girl joining. Fu blushed a little when Conan said, my name is Conan, and I hope we can be the best of friends. Naruto introduced the leader of their group, saying, the others are Yahiko, he's the leader of the Akatsuki. Yahiko grinned broadly and said, hi there. Introducing his sensei, Naruto said, my mentor, Obito. Obito nodded and said, nice to meet you. Fu leaned in closer to Naruto. Fu questioned, is he your father? Naruto raised an eyebrow and said, what, is this because of the left side of my face? Fu hurriedly said, waving her hands defensively, no, it's not that. When Obito continued to smile, which was probably a sign that he heard them, Naruto blushed and said, it's just you guys sort of look alike, plus you have admiration for him written all over your face. Naruto began to clear his throat. Naruto pointed to the dark-skinned man and said, anyway, the other two are Killer Bee, the Hachibi Gyuki's Jinchuriki. A Jinchuriki girl, I see. It's nice to meet ya. The name's the Rappin' Killer Bee, vessel of the only Gyuki no Hachibi. Yo, Bee began to rap. Fu looked like he was sweating profusely. Naruto pointed to the blonde woman and said, and the last one is Yugito Ni, a member who has recently joined the ranks and is the Nibi Matabi's Jinchuriki. Yugito smiled slightly and said, it's nice to meet you, Fu-san. When Fu saw two other Jinchuriki besides Naruto, he grinned. Naruto declared, Fu's agreed to join our ranks. Yahiko said, excellent. Yugito, B, get Fu set up. After giving Yahiko a nod, the two elder Jinchuriki brought Fu along to help set her up. When Naruto gave her a nod of approval, Fu's initial reluctance to accompany the two Kumo shinobi vanished. Naruto turned to face the three Akatsuki members in front of him as he watched his fellow Jinchuriki depart. As Naruto put it, we have a problem. Conan, Obito, and Yahiko were now wearing solemn expressions. Yahiko questioned, what is it? Naruto turned to face Itachi and gave him a nod. The three senior Akatsuki members were told by Itachi, apparently, Orochimaru is collecting the Biju. The eyes of Yahiko, Obito, and Conan grew wide before their expressions returned to seriousness. According to Yahiko, this isn't good. Conan posed the question that was on everyone's mind. I don't understand. I thought Orochimaru only wanted the Sharingan, why would he want the tailed beasts? Naruto slammed his fist into his palm and yelled, whatever the reason, the next time I see him, I'm going to kill his ass. Conan, you best go and inform Nagato of the news behind our old friend, Yahiko replied. Conan gave him a bow before retreating. Itachi, I'd like to hear more about this new info. Yahiko replied. Itachi gave a nod, then trailed Yahiko to another location. Since Kisame gets jittery if he stays in one spot for too long, he had already left to go train. As Naruto turned to go, he saw that Obito had a distant expression on his face. Naruto said, hey, are you okay, Obito? After emerging from his daze, Obito turned to face Naruto. Obito waved it off, saying, huh? Oh yeah, I'm fine. Naruto was aware that his mentor was lying, but he chose not to investigate. If his sensei didn't want to give him any information, he didn't have to, but if it was crucial, he would eventually have to tell the truth. Heading out, Naruto said, well, alright. Anyway, I'm going to go find Zabuza. Wiggling one eyebrow, Obito asked, you want to visit Haku again, don't you? The remark made Naruto blush. Naruto responded, no, actually, I wanted him to teach me. Obito questioned, teach you in what? You want to what? Inquired Zabuza. I want to make a sword, so I came to you so you could teach me how to, Naruto replied. Zabuza questioned, why didn't you go to Kisame? 1. I don't think he makes a good teacher. 2. I don't he knows how to make a sword. And 3. Compared to him, you're actually sane. Naruto explained his justifications. Zabuza remarked, well, you got some good points there. Zabuza began to consider it while scratching his chin. Alright then, I'll help, but don't think this'll give you a free pass to try anything on Haku. Zabuza replied threateningly. Naruto became serious about creating a sword, saying, I'll admit it Zabuza, I like Haku, but I'm here to make a sword, and right now that's the only thing that matters. Under his bandages, Zabuza grinned at the boy's enthusiasm. Alright then, but before you make your sword, you should practice making a few so you could get the hang of it. Zabuza responded. Naruto gave a sympathetic nod. So how does it look? Naruto asked Zabuza as he displayed a huge broadsword with a heavy double-edged blade that had a spiked pommel and notches on both sides close to the tip. The grip is simple, but the guard was demonic and skeletal, with a design of Naruto's demon mask on one side and a human skull with what appeared to be bandages covering its eyes on the other, leading to a rib cage where the blade emerges in a spiked crosstree that protrudes from the skull. Slightly different, but it resembles Dante's sword from the Devil May Cry series. Zabuza questioned, "So this is what you want your sword to look like?" Naruto replied with a nod. "Well, not bad kid, but..." Zabuza took Naruto's sword and slammed it against a stone, causing it to vibrate. "See that? It shouldn't vibrate like that, and it didn't even leave that much of a scratch." Naruto said a little dejectedly, "I guess I have a lot to learn then, Ibeo." Zabuza responded, "True, but you got potential kid." At Zabuza's remark, Naruto grinned, "Now make another." "Yes sir," Naruto said, mockingly saluting Zabuza. Zabuza grinned at the child's zeal. Who would have guessed that the Gaki, who lacked skill in Wave Country, would be capable of swordplay? With a smile concealed behind his bandages, Zabuza thought, "I'm actually glad we met, kid." Sakura was strolling down the street in Konoha on her way to the Uchiha compound. Since she hadn't seen Sasuke in a long time, she made the decision to pay him a brief visit and ask if he would like to hang out with her as friends rather than on a date. Sakura's affections for Sasuke had been waning ever since Naruto's passing, giving way to feelings for Naruto. She began to feel more affection for the deceased blonde after realizing that Naruto had always supported her more than Sasuke during their time as Team 7. Nobody will ever be able to take Naruto's place in her heart, not now, not ever. Sakura noticed another person strolling along the path as she was. Her face was framed by chin-length strands of short dark blue hair in a leveled cut style just above her forehead, and she had fair skin. She wore navy blue pants, the traditional shinobi sandals, and a cream-colored hooded jacket with a fire symbol on the upper right and left sleeves and fur at the cuffs and hem. Sakura grinned because she knew exactly who that was. "Hey, Hinata!" Sakura exclaimed, calling out the name of the heiress. She made an eeping sound and flinched at Hinata. Sakura was jogging all the way up to Hinata when she turned around. Hinata stumbled, "Oh, H. Hello Sakura. S.San, how are you ta.day?" Sakura paused in front of the bento box that Hinata was holding. With a cunning expression on her face, Sakura remarked, "I see you got a bento box." Sakura teased, "Is that for a certain Uchiha?" The question made Hinata blush. It's just a way to show my thanks to him," Hinata replied. Sakura questioned, Thanks for what?" Sakura had never seen the Rookie 9 by themselves, but she had seen Sasuke speak to her a few times when they were all together. Well, you see, one day I was at the park circa crying, and Sasuke-kun found me and asked what was troubling me. Hinata replied. Sakura was taken aback. Typically, Sasuke would turn away and disregard someone who was crying because he thought it was unimportant. "You see, my clan always saw me as a lost cause. They expected great things from me, but I just made them very disappointed, but none were more disappointed than my father. Sasuke-kun understood my pain and decided to help me in getting stronger. He didn't have to, but he chose to, and that's why I'm bringing him this, as a sign of my gratitude." Hinata blushed. Sakura was taken aback by Sasuke's decision to help Hinata train. This was completely out of character for the Sasuke who initially joined Team 7, and it made Sakura smile. Sakura thought, genuinely grinning, "You've really changed, haven't you, Sasuke?" "Well, I was on my way to see Sasuke. You want to go together?" replied Sakura. After blushing, Hinata nodded her head. Sakura smiled broadly at Hinata before they strolled together to the Uchiha compound. In his mother's former garden, Sasuke was sitting in the lotus position. The garden featured a large sakura tree, luscious flowers, bonsai scattered throughout, and a small pond with koi fish swimming in it. A waterfall cascaded down from a rock formation to the pond. Sasuke wore a long, sleeved black haori and loose-fitting black robes that were tucked into loose-fitting black kimono pants. Sasuke was holding a katana in both hands on his lap. The handle of the katana appeared to be braided from black and white material, and the guard was an elaborate oval-shaped piece of bronze. The scabbard was black, made of traditional lacquered wood, and had multiple metallic ornaments on its far end. The hilt's end point featured a relief of a dragon. There was a relief of a hawk on the scabbard. Additionally, it has a yellow sagio, which is the waist-tying cord for the katana. The scabbard features a hawk design, similar to Virgil's katana from Devil May Cry 3 and 4. While meditating and lost in thought, Sasuke felt an unfamiliar presence in the garden. As he partially unsheathed the katana in his hand, Sasuke said, "Let us get things started, Tamashii." Sasuke was suddenly attacked by 4 figures. The 4 enigmatic figures attempted to strike Sasuke from above with a kunai, but the lone Uchiha completely unsheathed his katana and blocked it. Then the lone Uchiha shoved them aside and put his katana back in its sheath. Sasuke looked at the 4 intruders and remarked, "Haven't you ever learned to never disturb someone when they are deep in thought?" All 4 of the enigmatic creatures had the same appearance. They had on black long, sleeved skin, tight shirts, black pants, black gloves, bandages around their ankles, black sandals, black masks covering their heads, and red goggles over their eyes. Sasuke demanded answers, asking, "What exactly are you doing in my home?" None of the 4 bothered to respond, they just kept quiet. Sasuke just said, partially unsheathing his katana, "I see." Abruptly, one of the menacing intruders ran towards Sasuke, brandishing a kunai, poised to attack. Sasuke swung his katana up and back into his scabbard in a single, fluid motion. Sasuke remarked, "You shouldn't have done that." The assailant's hand was abruptly severed from its wrist. Their teammate was left behind as the other 3 leapt to the rooftops. Sasuke saw the person who had attacked him begin to melt as he watched them leap away, turning into a mound of white goo. Sasuke's eyes narrowed at the heap. Now that was surprising, Sasuke reflected. After that, the Uchiha leapt to the roof to confront one of the assailants. Suddenly, spikes of wood emerged from the attacker's outstretched hand. Though he was shocked on the inside, Sasuke maintained his composure. She swiftly severed all of the wooden spikes from his katana. Sasuke swiftly went through a series of hand signals and yelled out, "Kaden! Gokaku no Jutsu!" As he blew, a massive fireball was sent hurtling straight towards the attacker, incinerating his root. Like tentacles and engulfing the black-clad man. The black shinobi then leapt into the air and extended his arms towards Sasuke, creating tentacles that resembled roots and pursuing the Uchiha. When Sakura and Hinata heard an explosion coming from inside the compound, they stopped dead in their tracks. Hinata questioned, "What was that?" Sakura ran farther into the compound and exclaimed, "I don't know, but it might have been Sasuke, and he could be in trouble." "Let's go, Hinata." Sakura was immediately followed by Hinata, who was still holding the bento. They were once again stopped in their tracks when 2 people wearing black abruptly leapt down in front of them. "Who the hell are you 2? Sakura exclaimed. With one of them tilting their head, the 2 enigmatic people simply stood there in silence. Sakura shouted, "Well, whoever you are, get out of my way." As she advanced, but one of the shinobi in black attempted to hit her. Sakura leapt back when she saw the attack, but the other person reached out and threw wood fragments with spikes at her. When Sakura realized they were getting close, Hinata leapt in front of her and batted the wood away with her Juken style. Sakura seized the chance to leap over Hinata and punch the 2 in the lower body. Sakura's punch caused a shockwave and rocks to shoot out of the ground, causing both of them to lose their balance as they leapt back a little. Sakura took a chance by charging at one of them, hitting his stomach with her fist, and then using the momentum to force him to the ground. Sakura saw some white fluid on her hand as she drew her fist back, and she looked down at her in defeat to see him turn into a mound of white goo. Sakura said, disgusted, "Ew, gross." The other assailant ran towards Sakura, ready to sever her with his wooden spiked hand, but as he swung at her, his arm was pushed aside and he was slammed into her chest, which sent him skidding back. Hinata said, "Don't you dare touch my friend." Sakura turned to see Hinata shielding her from the black-clad shinobi by adopting her Juken stance. Sakura joyfully and proudly sang, "Hinata, you saved me. And you didn't stutter." For her friend, Sakura approached Hinata and assumed her fighting stance. Sakura said confidently, "Give it up, pal. It's 2 against 1. You can't win." Instead, after transforming his other hand into a single wooden claw, the enigmatic black-clad stranger struck the ground with both of his claws. Although Sakura and Hinata were braced for anything, they were not prepared for the roots to emerge from the earth and encircle them. They attempted to fight their way out of it, but they felt as though their chakra was being drained, leaving them feeble. Damn it. Sakura felt her energy being absorbed by the roots and thought angrily, "These roots are sucking the chakra right out of our bodies. I can't do shit, and neither can Hinata." With his head cocked to the side, the black-clad man lunged towards the 2, his claws drawn back in preparation to sever them. Sakura closed her eyes, bracing herself for the agonizing death, but she experienced no sensation. According to Hinata, Sasuke-kun. When Sakura opened her eyes, she saw Sasuke crouching with his katana out in front of the enigmatic assailant. The assailant and the roots holding Sakura and Hinata in place were sliced to pieces as Sasuke rose, sheathed his sword, and made sure it was fully inside the scabbard. Sasuke approached Hinata and held out his hand as the enemy in black melted into white goo. As she took his hand, Hinata blushed at the thoughtful gesture, and the boy with the raven hair helped her to her feet. Sakura thought Sasuke would assist her, but he didn't. With a neutral expression, Sasuke asked, "Are you going to get up? Or do you love the ground so much you wish to get intimate with it?" Hinata blushed at the final line, while Sakura glared at Sasuke. As she got up, Sakura remarked cynically, "Geez, thanks for asking if I was fine, Sasuke, you're so sweet." Two Anbu unexpectedly showed up at the compound. There was a female wearing a Neko, cat, mask and a male wearing a Kumo, bear, mask. The Kumo Anbu inquired, "Is everyone alright?" Sakura informed the Anbu, "Yeah, but we were just attacked by some creeps all dressed in black. We had heard from other shinobi that they spotted some questionable characters in black clothing. Do you know where they went?" The Neko, masked Anbu inquired. Sasuke pointed to the white goo on the floor and said, "Actually, they're right here." Sasuke told them, when they are defeated, they melt into this strange goo-like substance. Neko stated, "It would be best to obtain a sample for Hokage Sama." Kumo pulled out a bag, gathered some of the goo, and put it inside. "If you see any more of these mysterious intruders running around the village, inform us." Neko responded. After that, Neko and Kumo vanished in a whirl of foliage, leaving the three genin by themselves. Sakura remarked, "Well, today was pretty exciting, wasn't it?" Before leaving to return home, Sasuke gave her his well-known HN. Sakura said, "Hey, where are you heading?" Sasuke continued to walk away, saying, "Home." Hinata uttered the name of the lone Uchiha, Sasuke-kun. She was offering a bento box when Sasuke turned to face her. "It's to show my gratitude for helping with my training," said Hinata. Taking the bento, Sasuke peered inside. It was served with shrimp fried rice and freshly chopped tomatoes. His mother used to prepare it, and it was his favorite dish. Before closing it, Sasuke grinned at the food Hinata had given him. Sasuke continued to smile as he said, "Thank you, Hinata." The lone Uchiha's gratitude made Hinata blush. Sakura decided to contribute to strengthening their bond after witnessing its growth. Sakura pushed her teammate toward his house and said, "Come on Sasuke, let's get you dressed." Sasuke said, "Excuse me? You are going to come spend time with me and Hinata? All that time in your house isn't good for you," Sakura responded. "Sakura, it's either you get dressed and come with us willingly, or else I'm going to force you," Sakura said. Sasuke simply sighed and began walking to his compound to change so he wouldn't have to deal with Sakura's brazen behavior. "And leave that sword of yours." As he continued to walk, Sasuke remarked, "My blade has a name, Tamashi, and he goes with me everywhere, no exceptions." Sakura let out a frustrated sigh at her teammate's obstinacy. Sakura said, "By the way Hinata, thanks for saving me there." Hinata stammered, "Oh, I.itw. was no page problem, Sakura.san. "Did you really mean it when you said we were friends?" replied Sakura. Hinata nodded, blushing in embarrassment. Sakura suddenly tackled Hinata into an embrace, which caused the Hyuga to flush even more. Sakura exclaimed, "I'm so happy we're finally friends, Hinata." Then she withdrew and took Hinata's hand. "I promise Hinata, I'll always be watching your back and be by your side, I promise," Sakura replied. Really?" Hinata questioned incredulously. Sakura cried, "Of course, and I never go back on my word." Believe it. For a brief moment, Hinata blushed when she saw an image of Naruto before her focus was returned to Sakura, who was smiling at her. After nodding and grinning, Hinata gave the two a brief embrace before they parted ways. According to Sasuke, "I'm back." He was wearing his typical attire, which included sandals, arm warmers, white shorts, and a bright blue shirt. As he mentioned, Sasuke always carries Tamashi with him. Tamashi means soul, in case you were wondering. Sakura exclaimed, "Great, now let's head out, Shanaru," as she and the two heirs with dark hair left the compound. Hinata remarked, "S. She's very excited." Sasuke remarked, "Sadly, she's always this way." As she followed her new friend wherever the road led, Hinata simply grinned. Zabuza said, "All right, Gaki, I think you've done it." Zabuza was shown Naruto's sword. Zabuza cut a rock in half with the big blade Naruto had given him. With Haku at his side, Obito entered the room and remarked, "Impressive." Zabuza returned the broadsword to Naruto and remarked, "Yep, kid, I think you've finally done it." Naruto put down the sword he was holding and exclaimed, "Sweet, now I can get started on the real sword," with great excitement. "Huh?" asked Obito and Zabuza. "But Naruto-kun, I thought that this would be your sword?" Haku replied. "Actually, I wanted to practice making it, before I actually got started making it with the special kind of material I collected," Naruto replied. Mamoru was waiting to see how the others responded to the special material, while they wondered what it was. Zabuza inquired, "What kind of material?" Naruto pulled out a small scroll and smiled at the three. A larger scroll was then revealed when he placed it on the floor and opened it, causing a cloud of smoke to form. A meteorite was then revealed when Naruto opened that scroll and created another cloud of smoke. Mamoru anticipated the three other Akatsuki members' eyes widening to the size of saucers when they saw the enormous space rock. "So Zabuza, do you think we can make a sword out of a meteorite?" Naruto inquired. Then Zabuza touched Naruto's shoulder. Zabuza grinned beneath his bandages and said, "Kid, we'll make a sword unlike any other." Zabuza brought the enormous stone hammer tool, and Naruto got to work filling the room's furnace with coal. Grabbing a stone stake, Naruto firmly stopped the meteorite. Then Zabuza began pounding the stake, shattering the meteorite into fragments. Zabuza gathered the meteorite fragments into a stone bucket while Naruto went to the device that supplied the fire with additional air to keep it burning. After setting the bucket on a table, Zabuza grabbed it with the extending claw tool and set it in the fire to melt. Naruto was adding more coal to the fire to keep it going as night fell. Zabuza grinned at the child's development and began to genuinely like him. In a sense, the child was similar to himself. It was now morning, and Naruto grabbed the bucket that turned into lava with the claw tool before dipping it into a hole shaped like a sword. Then, using a kunai, Naruto sliced the palm of his hand, allowing his blood to seep into it along with Kurama's and his chakra. Zabuza questioned, "Kid, why'd you do that?" "Someone told me he did this to have full control over his weapon, without the need to touch it," Naruto replied. After the sword was finished, Zabuza was interested in seeing this theory put into practice. Naruto grasped the sword with metal gloves to avoid getting burned as it solidified after cooling down a little. After that, he set it on an anvil and shaped the blade into the desired shape with a metal mallet hammer. Naruto submerged the sword in water to allow it to cool while he shaped it to his desired shape. Naruto had created his ideal sword after a protracted and difficult process. With the exception of the bandages covering the eyes of the human skull and the demon head, his enormous double-edged broadsword was black in color. Zabuza said, "Not a bad blade, kid." Zabuza stated, "Now all you got to do is know how to use it." Naruto said, "Could you teach me how?" Nodding, Zabuza said, "Sure. But first you should name it." "So what's it going to be, Gaki?" replied Zabuza. After examining his new sword, Naruto smiled as he thought of the ideal moniker for it. "Shoken," Naruto remarked while examining his homemade sword. Behind his bandages, Zabuza grinned and said, "Redemption? I like it." With his new sword, Naruto slashed quickly into the air before hurling it into a rock and stabbing it deeply. Then, using some chakra and a hand motion, the sword flew back to Naruto, slowing him down so he could grab the handle before thrusting it forward. Naruto declared, "With this blade, I shall bring peace and redeem the world," with great assurance and conviction. After dinner that evening, Naruto hobbled all the way back to bed after practicing Kenshu with Zabuza. It was intense. Naruto truly thought he was going to die, but Zabuza had not shown him any mercy as he had anticipated from the swordsman. Naruto set his sword aside, pulled out his sketchpad, and began drawing it as Mamoru leapt onto the bed and curled into a ball. After finishing the design of the sword, demon head, and human skull, Naruto placed the sketchpad back in his drawer and lay on top of his bed. Naruto remarked, "Today was pretty good, right Mamoru?" When Naruto called out his best friend's name, Mamoru, the small fox kid was already fast asleep. As he lay down on his bed, Naruto merely chuckled a little. "Good night Mamoru. Good night Ka-san, too. Chan." Minato uttered the words, "Good night Naruto," in his son's head. Kushina bid her son good night, saying, "Good night Naruto-kun." Naruto said, "Good night Kurama." Kurama went back to sleep after saying, "Good night Kit." Through the window before him, Naruto gazed at the stars. Sakura, Chan, Ba, Chan, Ero, Gigi, Sasuke, Teme, and Kakashi-sensei. Good night. Before closing his eyes and entering the realm of dreams, Naruto reflected, "I hope you guys have sweet dreams." Rin was at home doing the dishes while grinning and humming a beautiful song. She had disclosed her pregnancy to Obito and Naruto 3 months prior. In actuality, Naruto was the one who discovered it, but still. Since then, her stomach had gotten bigger. She was now displaying a bump. Additionally, Naruto had been going on more missions and supporting the Akatsuki by bringing in new, highly skilled members. In fact, she had virtually adopted one. Rin grinned as she recalled how Obito and Naruto had discovered her. Tobi and Hashi were running through trees following a mission of assassination. "You've gotten very handy with that blade of yours, Hashi," Tobi replied. Hashi, who was holding the handle of his blade, Shoken, said, "It's all thanks to Zabuza." Hashi had stopped on a branch as they kept jumping. Observing Hashi's stop, Tobi stopped too. Tobi turned to his pupil wearing a demon mask and said, "Something bothering you?" Hashi noticed a young girl sitting beneath the tree he was perched atop when he looked down. She had fair skin, crimson eyes, and red shoulder length hair in an odd style. It was longer and straight on the left side and short and spiky on the right. She was dressed in a black skirt, a mesh shirt, a beige short-sleeved haori, brown glasses, a kunai holster strapped around her leg, and typical shinobi sandals. Hashi thought this girl might be familiar. "Hashi?" Tobi repeated the name of his student. Then Hashi leapt to the ground. Glancing down, Tobi saw Hashi standing in front of a red-haired girl. Red hair? Tobi wondered if she might be. When the red-haired girl looked up, she saw a man with a straw hat on top of his head and a mask covering his lower half. The man tipped his hat and smiled at the girl, saying, "Ohio." The girl was terrified of the newcomer until she noticed a fox kid emerge from the man's black cloak. The fox leapt from his hiding place and approached the girl. He jumped onto her and licked her face, surprising the girl who had been staring at the small fox kid, fearing that he would bite. The girl began to giggle, and when the fox kid's kisses began to tickle, that giggle turned into laughter. The man remarked, "I see Mamoru already likes you." He was crouched in front of the girl when she looked up at him. He said, "What's your name?" The girl was a little tired of the man, but she felt less anxious when the fox kid rubbed himself against her. Karen, stammered the girl, who was now Karen. The man inquired, "Do you have a last name?" Karen hesitated to give her last name to him. The man said, "You don't have to tell me if you don't want to." Karen was still tired because she felt that he had some darkness in him, but as she paid closer attention to him, she noticed a wonderful, warm vibe that astounded and enchanted her. "Uzumaki," Karen told him, feeling confident in this man. The eyes of the fox and the man grew wide. The man exclaimed in surprise, "Uzumaki? You're an Uzumaki?" Weary of his surprise, Karen nodded back. The man gave her a tight hug out of the blue. Karen was taken aback by the unexpected hug. The man said, "An Uzumaki, like me." It was shocking news for Karen. With a single tear streaming down his cheek, the man declared, "I finally found one of my own clan." Karen said, "Who are you?" Karen was separated by the man. The man said, "Sorry, guess I should introduce myself." Then he revealed who he was by removing his mask and straw hat. In addition to his sun-kissed blonde hair, cerulean eyes, and whisker marks on his cheeks, Karen was shocked to see that the left side of his face was crushed and burned from the neck area. However, his scars actually added to his attractive appearance. "My name is Naruto, and even though I may not look like it, I am an Uzumaki as well," said Naruto. Karen was taken aback once more. Karen remarked, "You're an Uzumaki, just like me?" Naruto confirmed with a nod. Then Karen broke down in tears. Naruto became anxious. "Hey, Karen, are you ALR?" Naruto was cut off by Karen's unexpected embrace. Karen sobbed on Naruto's shoulder while holding him close to her. Karen sobbed as she embraced Naruto tightly and said, "I'm not alone, not anymore." Naruto put his arms around Karen tenderly and grinned. Naruto grinned and said, "Don't worry, Karen. I promise from now on I'll be here for you." All he knew about this girl, whom he had just met, was her name and that they belonged to the same clan, but that didn't matter. He didn't care if she was an enemy because he understood the anguish of loneliness just as much as she did. Behind his mask, Tobi grinned as he peered down. "It appears that you have located another Naruto of your own, and most likely another supporter of our cause." Karen was genuinely content once she arrived at the Akatsuki. Being the most proficient sensor-type shinobi in the Akatsuki, she was extremely valuable to the group, especially since she was not only an Uzumaki but also collaborated with Orochimaru, bitterly, given how much she hated the man. Karen had heard that Orochimaru was working on a cloning project using a strange substance that resembled cells. Although Orochimaru was gradually establishing himself as a serious threat, it was still unclear why he was targeting the Jinchuriki. Does he want to destroy Konoha with them? Was he attempting to unleash the Sage of the Six Paths power? Or was there another reason for all of this? Karen said to her adoptive mother, "Morning, Rin." Rin grinned and said, "Morning, Karen." Karen said, "Do you need help?" Rin continued to wash the dishes and replied, "No, I'm fine." Karen responded, "Well, I'm going to help anyway." The girl then smiled as she helped her adoptive mother. Even though Karen had only known Rin for 2 months and a week, she adored her and, like Naruto, saw Obito as a father and Rin as a mother. Karen said, "By the way, where's Obito?" Rin turned to her adopted daughter and remarked, "Oh, he's with Yahiko doing some important stuff as usual." Karen inquired, "And Naruto?" Rin remarked, "Like you really need to ask?" Because it was linked to Naruto's chakra, it was able to remain attached to its creator while he was in the center of the training area with his eyes closed and Shokin on his back clinging to it without the need for a strap. Naruto began to calmly inhale and exhale while allowing the chakra to freely circulate throughout his body. Then, beginning to concentrate his chakra, Naruto brought both of his hands together in a ram seal. A root had begun to emerge from the ground as Naruto steadily focused. The root began to grow and emerge from the earth. Naruto's face was furrowed as he focused on the root before him. A second root began to grow as the first one grew larger, and then a third emerged from the ground. The 3 roots were beginning to intertwine. As it continued to grow, the roots began to unite and produce branches that sprouted leaves. The roots had grown into a single, large tree after a short while. After removing his hands from one another and wiping the perspiration from his brow, Naruto turned to face the newly constructed tree. Obito approached him and remarked, "Looks like you're doing well with the Mokuton, eh?" Naruto said to his mentor, "Oh, hey Obito." Then he looked at the tree he had just built. Naruto grinned and remarked, "It does look pretty good, huh? Keep it up, and who knows? You could probably surpass your ancestor," said Obito. "I don't really think I'll outdo great-grandpa Hashirama," Naruto replied. "So what's up?" "A new mission has just come up, and I think it's best that you were to be a part of it," said Obito. Naruto followed his mentor back to the base after nodding. Naruto asked, "Tsukihara no Mura? Moonlight Village?" Naruto questioned, "Isn't that where Akiko lives?" According to Yahiko, that is correct. Apparently, it has been taken over by Otto. They're there using Tsukihara as a base of operation, and keeping Toru Yurio there as well. Yurio? As in like Kaizo Yurio? That dead piece of scum had a relative that likes to work with Otto, too? Naruto screamed. Yes. Toru Yurio is Kaizo's twin brother, and he is just like him in every way, except he also sells contraband. Obito told Naruto. The news made Naruto clench his fists. Naruto shook his head at the possibility of what might happen to Akiko. If this guy is just like his brother, then he'll probably. Naruto's steely eyes said, "Okay, I'm in. You'll be sent in with a team to go in, kill Toru, eliminate all Auto bases and the head of the Auto.Nin who is running the village, along with any other Auto.Nin you encounter. Losing their benefactor, their safe houses and their strongest member will most likely send them packing," Yahiko stated. Naruto replied with a nod. Naruto questioned, "Who are the members of my team?" "The team will be composed of Zabuza Momochi, Hikuyuki, Fu and Karen," Yahiko stated. Worried about the redhead he had met more than 2 months prior, Naruto questioned, "Karen? Not to go against your orders, sir, but why Karen? I know she is the best at sensing chakra, but aren't you sure there is another?" Naruto had grown to view Karen as a sister since she joined the Akatsuki, and he wished for her well. "Naruto, I know you care an awful lot about Karen and her safety, but in our line of work and for the success of missions, we must put our personal feelings aside, do you understand?" replied Obito. Naruto knew his mentor was correct, even though he still didn't like it. Naruto replied, "Yes sensei." Naruto raised an eyebrow and said, "But aren't you afraid of what Rin will do when she hears you're sending her in as well?" Obito remarked, "I'm sure she'll be cooperative." Rin shouted, "You baka!" and hurled a metal pot at Obito. Obito had to roll away as Rin attempted to slam a frying pan on him, but he was able to duck in time. Rin yelled, "You are in for it now, Obito," before pursuing Obito and attempting to strike him with a frying pan. While Rin was using a frying pan to chase her fiancé around, Naruto and Karen were seated at the table with Mamoru, allowing the two lovers to resolve their differences. Karen addressed the blonde, saying, "I'm a little nervous, Naruto." As time went on, the two came to view one another as siblings who were constantly supportive of one another. Naruto replied, "I know, so am I," Karen gasped. "You are?" inquired Karen. "Well, yeah. I always am, because I'm afraid of failing the mission, the Akatsuki, and my precious people. Naruto replied. Karen was taken aback since she had always believed Naruto to be the bravest shinobi of their time. Naruto called out to the red-headed person, Karen. Whatever happens on this mission, I'll be there watching your back, said Naruto. The words of her surrogate brother made Karen smile and blush. Naruto, it's nice of you to say that, but I'm sure I can take care of myself. I mean, you've already promised me so much, like trying to find my sister and convince her to join Akatsuki, helping me get stronger, and you accepted me. Karen replied. When she turned to face Naruto, she noticed that he was grinning at her after feeling him put a hand on her shoulder. Naruto remarked, well, that's what family is for, sis. Karen grinned at him after being taken aback. Obito cowered in terror as he went beneath the table during their precious brother-sister time. Rin yelled, a table's not going to save you, while standing at the table. In an attempt to sound reasonable, Naruto said, Rin, don't punish Obito. I think he didn't want to put Karen on this mission, because he knew how you would feel for putting her on such a dangerous one. If you want to punish someone, punish Yahiko, he's the leader. Naruto replied. Obito hurriedly said, yes, Naruto is right Rin-chan. I swear I didn't want to put our sweet Karen on such a very dangerous mission such as this. It was all Yahiko's idea, in the hopes that Rin would agree. Rin continued to glare at Obito for a while before letting out a sigh. Rin then looked hopefully at Naruto. Rin begged her surrogate son, Naruto, please promise me that you'll keep Karen safe, and that you both will come back safe. Naruto assured his surrogate mom, of course Rin-chan, I promise. Fearing for his life, Obito asked, can I come out now? Naruto remarked, yeah, I'm sure Rin has calmed down. When Obito cautiously emerged from beneath the table, Rin's frying pan struck him in the head. Mamoru snickered when he saw Obito with a bump on his head, and Naruto scratched the back of his head and looked at Rin and Karen, who were both laughing. Then again, I don't really understand women. Both Karen and Naruto had gathered with their team while wearing their cloaks. You're finally here, and I see you brought Shoken, Zabuza replied. Gazing down at his sword, Naruto declared, I don't go anywhere without him. Shoken had shown itself to be a very good weapon. Shoken is strong, fast, and capable of sending amazing wind strikes using both Kurama's and Naruto's chakra when used as a last resort. However, it can accomplish an even more amazing feat. I'm putting that off for later. I like to refer to it as insurance, so you guys will stay, he. Zabuza pulled his hood over his head and said, well then, if we're all set, let's head out. With the exception of Naruto, who donned his straw hat and lower half mask, everyone else followed suit. After that, the five leapt into the trees and headed for Sukiakara. After hours of travel, Naruto continued to stare ahead with a stern expression, but he felt compelled to check on Karen. Karen was attempting to keep up with the other four when she was abruptly knocked down by a branch that broke off from the tree. When Karen opened her eyes, she saw that Naruto had saved her and kept her bridal style intact. She screamed as she fell straight to the ground, but she never touched it. Naruto said, you okay, Imoto? Karen shouted angrily, who are you calling little sister? I'm older than you. Yeah, you're all right. Naruto grinned. Naruto was able to seal Shoken into the seal he used to keep it safe after a cage Bushin appeared beside him and grabbed Karen. The clone then placed Karen on Naruto's back before dispelling. Naruto wrapped his arms around Karen's legs as he laid her on his back. Naruto said, hold on. Then he leapt to the tree and discovered the others were there to greet him. Naruto said, sorry about that, but don't worry, we're ready to. But he stopped talking when he felt a liquid run down his arm. He turned to see blood on his right arm. Naruto noticed that Karen was bleeding from her leg. Naruto said, Karen, you're bleeding. Karen said, I'll be fine, Naruto. It's okay. Naruto responded, no, we have to get that injury healed. He's right, Karen-chan, it is best to heal it as for it not to be infected. There is a shop farther ahead. We can tend to your injury there. Haku replied. Then they started jumping through the trees again. After that, the group arrived at the store Haku had mentioned. Fu read the sign that read, the curry of life? Naruto remarked, sweet, I'm pretty hungry actually, Dadbeo. Then he entered and saw a short elderly woman. The elderly woman said, oh, hello there. Welcome to the curry of life, I am Sancho. The woman wore glasses, a cap, a scarf around her neck, an orange kimono top over a white shirt with no sleeves, a blue apron, orange pants, and sandals. Her long hair framed the side of her face. Ohio, my sister here was injured on the way here. Do you mind if I tend to her wounds here? asked Naruto. Why, of course you can, and would you like some curry? Sancho responded. Yes, please, that would be nice. Also I hope you don't mind a few extra people, Naruto replied. Sancho smiled and said, oh not at all, the more the merrier. Naruto thanked the elderly woman, saying, arigato. Karen was led by Naruto to the counter and seated. Light encircled Naruto's back as he settled Karen into the seat, and as it dimmed, his sword Shoken was once again visible on his back. When Fu and Haku entered the store, they saw Naruto examining Karen's leg. Karen had a cut that ran down the side of her leg, which Naruto noticed. Naruto covered his hand with golden flames as he applied it to Karen's wound, saying, a little of Kurama's chakra will heal this up. When the chakra of her surrogate brother's Biju touched Karen, she winced. You know, I can heal the injury myself, after all Rin has taught me some medical ninjutsu, Karen replied. Naruto grinned and said, I know, but you're still my sister and I'll always be worrying about you and do anything to help you. Karen returned the smile. Even though Naruto's overly protective attitude toward her can be annoying, she couldn't help but smile at how much he cared for her. It made her happy that someone did. Naruto summoned the elderly shopkeeper once the wound had healed. Excuse me Lady Sancho, but may I borrow a rag and some water, and some bandages if you have any. As she got up from her curry pot to get the things the young blonde had asked for, Sancho said, of course, dear boy. Haku and Fu had also sat at the counter and gazed at Naruto. The two grinned at the blonde boy, who was always putting the needs of others before his own. Fu and Haku couldn't help but like Naruto because those were the traits of the type of man the girls liked. With the exception of Naruto, who was unable to recognize when someone had feelings for him, it was clear from the Akatsuki that the two were attracted to him. Sancho placed the bucket of water, rag, and bandages on the counter and said, here you go, child. Naruto thanked the elderly woman and she returned to preparing her curry. Arigato. After dipping the cloth into the water, Naruto removed it and squeezed the water out before applying it to Karen's leg to remove the blood. Naruto cleaned up the blood, replaced the rag in the bucket, then picked up the bandages and began encircling Karen's leg with them. Karen whispered to her surrogate brother, Naruto, aren't you forgetting that Kurama's chakra healed my wound already? I know, but I'm doing this so the old woman won't question why you don't have an injury anymore. Naruto replied. Karen nodded sympathetically. In case they were being spied on, it was best to pretend they were just ordinary travelers. Sancho put the curry and a side of rice on the counter table and said, here you go. Naruto had just finished putting the bandages on Karen's leg when he said, thank you, Sancho, Sama. Sancho remarked, by the way, I never caught your names. Naruto gestured to himself and Karen and said, I apologize, Sancho. Sama. My name is Hashi Kyukaze, and this is my sister Aika Kyukaze. Aika bowed her head at Sancho and said, it's nice to meet you, and thank you very much for the assistance and curry. Sancho laughed at the young girl's formality and grinned. Naruto pointed to Fu and said, and these two are Hana. The Hana smiled toothily and said, hi there. Naruto pointed to Haku and said, and Kaya. Kaya gave the old shopkeeper a nod. Hashi said, by the way Kaya, where's Tetsuo? Kaya remarked, he said he'd rather sit out in front. Knowing that Tetsuo was actually watching for any enemy shinobi, Hashi nodded sympathetically. Hashi took his spoon, scooped up some curry with rice, and then ate it after putting his hands together and saying, Itadakimasu. The girls waited to see if he liked it, but all of a sudden, his eyes widened and his face turned bright pink. After running outside, Hashi opened his mouth and a plume of flames emerged. Hashi went back to his seat as the fire subsided. Hashi gasped, wow Granny Sancho, that's some spicy curry. Sancho smiled and said, why thank you Hashi. After that, the girls carefully put some curry in their mouths and swallowed it. Their faces turned a vivid pink after a few moments, and then they screamed and drank large glasses of water from the counter. Wow! That curry really is spicy. But strangely, it makes me feel like I didn't even take a single step on our journey, Hana replied. Kaya replied, I agree. Sancho grinned and remarked, people say that my curry strengthens and rejuvenates them. As he continued to eat the curry, Hashi remarked, guess that explains why I feel like I can go toe-to-toe with a cage. They heard a knocking sound and turned to see Tetsuo standing at the entrance with his hood over his head. Sorry to disturb you, but I figured that the shopkeep would like to know that some more travelers are coming by. One of them seems to be screaming your name while sprinting here. Tetsuo stated to the other travelers. As she went outside to see who he was referring to, Sancho passed Tetsuo and headed for the entrance. Tetsuo approached his group. You guys might want to cover your faces, especially you Naruto, along with that left arm of yours. What's wrong? Inquired Naruto. A voice shouted, Granny Sancho, as it approached. Wait a minute, I know that voice. Oh crap, Lee, everyone, hide your identities like Zabuza said. Naruto replied. Then the girls nodded and donned straw hats and lower half masks. In order to hide his scars from the newcomers, Naruto hastily wrapped bandages around his left arm after donning his own mask and straw hat. They heard Sancho greeting the newcomer behind them, and Zabuza sat with them. Sancho said, Hello Lee, it's great to see you. With his booming voice, Lee remarked, It is also very great to see you again as well. Kaya stated, He's pretty excited. He always is. Hashi remarked, a drop of perspiration trickling down his brow. As his friend caught up with him, Lee said, Granny Sancho, I wish for you to meet my friends. These are my teammates Neji and Tenten. Neji said, Nice to meet you. Tenten remarked, Same here. And these are my other friends Sasuke and Sakura. Lee replied. When Naruto heard their names, his heart stopped, and his team noticed. Sakura said, Hi. To the elderly woman. Sasuke said, HN. Sort of. Sancho grinned and said, It's nice to meet all of you. Come in, I'll make you some curry. Yes. Lee exclaimed, expressing his youth by leaping into the air. Then Lee saw the 5 cloaked individuals seated at the counter. Lee remarked, Oh, I see you have customers. Oh yes, they're just travelers. One of them had been injured on their travel, so they stopped here to help tend to the young one's injury and of course have a nice hot meal. Sancho replied. The other's attention was drawn to the travelers, who were dressed in black cloaks with red clouds on them. It was clear that those cloaks were probably worn by shinobi, not just travelers. Sasuke continued to watch the man carrying the enormous black broadsword. He seemed familiar to Sasuke for some reason, but his sword caught his attention the most because it was unlike anything he had ever seen. It had an amazing design, a perfect appearance, and a sense of power, death, warmth, darkness, light, hatred, peace, and many other things. Sasuke could sense that it was different. Who is this guy? Sasuke questioned himself. Naruto was aware that Sasuke was interested in him, probably due to Shokin. Anyone would naturally be fascinated by Naruto's handcrafted blade, which was a marvel. Hashi said, deepening his voice a bit, Is there something I can help you with, kid? Sasuke merely said, HN, before sitting down with his friends at the room's long table. You will all love this curry, it is fantastic. I remember the first time I had ever tried it. Lee concluded. It was back when I was a genin, and Guy Sensei took me out for training. For 3 days we had jogged straight from Konoha, and on the 3rd day I had fell unconscious, my life fading, but that was until I had this delectable curry. It had saved my life, completely rejuvenating me. It was as if I had never started training with Guy Sensei. Sakura questioned, It's that good? Hearing her voice, her lovely, angelic voice, made Naruto smile. Naruto knew that he had to keep the fact that he was alive a secret, even from his friends, even though he would love nothing more than to take off his disguise, reveal his face to her, tell her he was alive, be in her arms, and tell her how much he loved her. Lee smiled and said, Yes Sakura-san, it is incredible. Naruto muttered, Yeah, incredibly good and hot. Lee pointed to the man with the unusual sword and said, Yes, like he had just said. Hashi remarked, You got a good pair of ears there, kid. Lee asked the man's name. Why thank you, and who may you be? Tenten said, Lee, don't bother him. No, it's quite all right. I don't mind telling him. Hashi replied. Hashi's red eyes turned to face him. The name's Hashi, Hashi Kyukaze. The voice was full of youth, as Lee said, It is nice to meet you. I am Rock Lee, Konoha's second green beast. And may I ask, where did you get an astounding sword such as that? Lee responded. Hashi gripped the blade handle and uttered, Oh, you mean Shokin? Made him myself. Tenten said, Wait, you made that? Since he had never seen Tenten like this before, Naruto was taken aback. Tenten squealed as she emerged behind Hashi, staring at the sword with stars in her eyes. Upon hearing Hashi nod in agreement, Tenten said, It's absolutely perfect. I've never seen such craftsmanship. Oh, well thank you, miss. Tenten introduced herself to Hashi as Tenten. Hashi remarked, Tenten. That's a beautiful name. The compliment caused Tenten to flush. Sakura had arched an eyebrow. This guy seemed familiar to her, but why? With typical youthfulness, for one of his competitors, Lee yelled, My friend Sasuke here has a blade of his own as well, the Tamashi. The sword's name caused Hashi and Tetsuo's eyes to enlarge. Hashi turned to face Sasuke and saw that he was holding a katana with a taka, hawk, relief on the scabbard. Hashi took a close look at the Konoha.nin after confirming that it was exactly what Lee had described. Team Guy had the same appearance, but Sasuke had on a black sleeveless vest, black Anbu pants, and blue sandals that reached halfway up his foreleg. In contrast, Sakura was wearing her typical sleeveless battle dress, but she also had a tattoo of a pink and gold fox on her left arm and one of Naruto's old jackets around her waist, which really caught his attention. Still in disbelief at the sight of the sword in Sasuke's hands, Hashi exclaimed, "Tamashi? The katana that was made from 1,000 Sharingan?" The final part caused everyone's eyes to widen. Now, Sasuke was curious as to how this stranger had discovered his katana's secret. Sasuke questioned, "You know of it?" Hashi replied with a nod. The legends say that back before the time of Madara Uchiha, there was a branch member of the Uchiha clan. Isao Uchiha had watched as members of his clan had perished at the hands of Senju shinobi. Isao had a broken heart and hatred in his very soul. He wished to have something the Senju clan didn't so that he may use it to protect his own. With that ambition set in his mind, Isao had taken every single Sharingan eye from all corpses of the deceased Uchihas and used those eyes to create a sword, one unlike any other. It is said that even though the eyes were from deceased Uchiha, the souls of the Uchihas were still inside their eyes, in turn existing inside the blade. The souls of those Uchihas coursed inside the blade, and as Isao wielded the katana he had felt power beyond belief, as if those souls from his dead clansmen course within him, flowing within his body, giving him unmeasurable power. Isao had wielded the blade against all Senju that stood in his path. Many considered he was a god with all the power he contained. The Senju clan had considered him a great threat, that they ambushed him and had managed to separate him from the sword. He didn't stand a chance, but he managed to escape with his blade, but unfortunately Isao was injured too greatly that he soon would meet his fate. In his last moments, Isao had sealed the blade away inside a box with a special seal, locking it away to keep it from anyone who wished to use it against his clan. That blade was known as the greatest weapon to have ever existed in history. With the souls of the Uchihas still inside the katana, it had been given the name Tamashi. Hashi explained the entire legend behind the blade, leaving everyone with awe and shocked looks upon their faces. Neji had said, "Incredible." This was shocking because he would never say something like that about anything Uchiha related. Tenten questioned Hashi, but how did it become unsealed? His Kenjutsu skills, his ability to make his own weapon, and his knowledge of a legendary blade that not even she was aware of piqued Tenten's interest. What a catch this guy was. It is said that Isao's special seal could only be undone when the blood of Uchiha clansmen was spilled onto Uchiha holy lands. Hashi continued. Because that only ever happened once, everyone's eyes widened. The massacre of the Uchiha clan. Hashi said, "Tell me, kid, can you wield that blade?" Sasuke gripped his scabbard firmly and pushed his thumb against his katana's guard, partially exposing the blade. Staring directly in front of himself, Sasuke said in monotone, "You're welcome to find out. There aren't many Kenjutsu specialists where I come from." Hashi smiled as everyone, with the exception of Zabuza and Granny Sancho, became tense, with the exception of Neji and Lee, who were eager to witness a fight between the two. "I'd love to spar with you, kid, but I'm afraid I can't. Like you, I got important stuff to do and I might need all my strength for it," Hashi replied. With his gaze still fixed on Hashi, Sasuke asked, "Is that so? Then at least show me how powerful your blade is." Hashi smiled in an animalistic manner. "Gladly," Hashi said. Hashi and Sasuke suddenly clashed with Shokin and Tamashi in a split second. They maintained their strong Kenjutsu stance while everyone stared at them in disbelief. Under his mask, Hashi grinned toothily and remarked, "Not bad, it's more than I expected it would be." Although his expression remained solemn, Sasuke was secretly grinning as he remarked, "Your blade is impressive as well." The two then turned away from one another, with Hashi putting Shokin back on his back and Sasuke putting Tamashi back in its sheath. After exchanging handshakes, the two returned to their seats. The two were sitting back in their seats, acting as though nothing had happened, while everyone stared at them in shock that they had suddenly clashed swords. However, Sasuke and Naruto had both experienced an odd sensation. They believed that a confrontation between Tamashi and Shokin was inevitable. Naruto knew why, as he and Sasuke were destined to clash, while the latter simply felt it without knowing why. "I suppose it was our fate," Naruto thought. "Listen, man, I'm beginning to sound like the old Neji." As she brought their meals to the Konoha.nin, Sancho said, "Here's your curry." Sancho said, "Enjoy." before returning to the kitchen. Lee ate it with a spoonful. His face suddenly turned red, and he let out a loud cry. The curry of life is so delectable and youth-giving. You all must try it, Lee shouted. Sakura and Tenten were presented with 2 cups of water after the other Konoha.nin finished a spoonful. When the 2 girls turned around, Hashi was back in his seat. Hashi said, "You two might need it." The girls simply shrugged as they took a bite and swallowed their curry, but as soon as Sasuke and Neji's faces turned red, the girls screamed because they felt like their mouths were on fire. While poor Sasuke and Neji had to endure the burning sensation in their mouths, Sakura and Tenten drank their water to cool their mouths. Sakura thanked Hashi, saying, "Thanks a lot." Tenten replied, "Yeah, you're a cool guy." "Why thank you? Sancho.san. You don't mind giving the kids at the table some water, do you? I'll gladly pay for them," Hashi replied. Sancho brought a plate of water to the genin table and said, "Oh, don't worry about it, Hashi.san. The water's free." Neji and Sasuke promptly snatched the cups and began drinking them as soon as the plate reached their table. Sakura punched Sasuke in the head and yelled, "Hey, leave some for the rest of us, bakas." Sasuke thought angrily, "Damn it, Naruto, why did you have to leave me with her?" As he observed the two interacting, Naruto whimpered in his mind, "Hey, that's mine and Sakura's thing." Lee asked excitedly, "So Hashi, what shinobi activities have you done?" Lee. Tenten angrily exclaimed his name. Hashi simply laughed. Hashi grinned as he gripped the handle of his broadsword and said, "Okay, you got me, I'm a shinobi. I guess it's pretty obvious with Shokin here." Hashi made Lee look down at his curry and said, "Well, Lee, is it? I do pretty big things that would be way too long and complex to tell you. So sorry, I can't tell." The other people just had sweaty faces. Kakashi. Sensei is exactly like this guy, Sasuke and Sakura remarked. "I see. I understand Hashi.san, but if it isn't too much trouble, may I ask where you are headed?" Lee responded. Hashi said, "Sukiakara no Mura." Everyone was staring at Sancho after she dropped one of the cups of water she was making for the genin. "Granny Sancho?" Lee asked, sounding worried. Sancho picked up the cup and said, "I'm fine." Hashi inquired, "There's someone precious to you there, am I correct?" but was aware of the response. Sancho replied, "Yes. My son Karashi." Lee cried out, "Karashi is in Sukiakara?" Sancho replied, "Yes." Lee questioned, "But why, Granny Sancho?" "When Karashi had met you, he had wanted to become as strong as you, so he ran off with a group called the Kurasuki family," Sancho continued. "Kurasuki? As in Raiga Kurasuki? One of the 7 ninja swordsmen?" Hashi replied. Sancho responded, "Yes, that's exactly who he is." When Zabuza heard his old colleague's name, he complained. Haku gazed at her mentor with sympathetic eyes. For some reason, Raiga always hated the other swordsman, and Haku dislikes Raiga because he doesn't like Zabuza. Hashi said to his cloak companions, "Sancho Sama, we can bring him back for you. As well, after all, we are going to the same destination as you are Hashi.kun, Lee roared. Naruto and Zabuza thought, "Ah crap." As he and the other cloaked figures got up from their table and began to leave, Hashi said, "Well, we're heading out." "Wait for us," shouted Lee. Hashi replied, "No." Hashi and his friends left the store with the statement, "You're welcome to follow, that's all. We're not from Konoha, so all of you and us aren't friends. We're just 2 groups heading in the same direction." At that point, Lee began to consume his curry as rapidly as possible. Lee continued to eat his curry rapidly, yelling, "Everyone, quickly eat your curry, we must join Hashi.kun." "Lee, we don't even know this man, why do you want us to team up with him?" Neji responded. "Didn't you see it, Neji? Hashi.kun had held his own against Sasuke.kun in a clash of swords, which is considered a very difficult thing to do back in Konoha. With Hashi and his comrades, we can bring back Karashi, without a doubt." Lee replied. "Karashi had once saved my life with this delectable curry, I owe it to him to bring him home." Sasuke wiped the mess from his face with his napkin and declared, "Done." Everyone had a single thought as they gazed at his empty plate. Quick. Afterwards, with Naruto and the others. As they all made their way to Sukiakara, Naruto, still disguised as Hashi, was leaping from branch to branch. They all heard a familiar voice shouting, "Hashi! Kun, wait!" from behind them. Lee and the other Konoha.nin were spotted by the group when they paused and turned around. Hashi remarked, "I see you decided to follow." Lee threw his fist in the air and yelled, "Yes, we will move as one and continue on with our wills burning with the power of youth." The Hashi and his group were silent, but they also had sweat drop expressions on the inside. The Konoha.nin simply had sweat drop expressions. With a secret smile, Naruto thought, same old Lee. Zabuza reflected, and here I thought Naruto would have been the most annoying person I'd ever met. Lee seems to have been perfectly described by Naruto.kun. Curious, Haku thought. Fu thought, I still don't see how this guy could be stronger than Naruto.kun. Ni.san was serious about this man. Karen thought, oh, great, I'm beginning to think I'm the younger one. Hashi remarked, I have no idea what youth is. His eyes were the size of saucers, and Lee's mouth fell open. Naruto grinned a little, enjoying this. As he and his cloaked colleagues leave, the Konoha.nin trailing behind, Hashi remarked, but if you are following, then you best not misstep. I'm not sure how having them with us will work out, but I know that when we carry out our plan, Sasuke and I might. No Mura outside of Sukiakara. The two groups had a perfect view of the village because they were perched on the edge of a cliff. The buildings appeared to have been abandoned a long time ago, and they were somewhat damaged and dirty. Oh my Kami. What happened to it? It looks so different from the last time we were here. Sakura responded. Naruto squinted, prepared to eliminate every Auto bastard who had destroyed this place. As he and his group leapt off the cliff with the Konoha.nin in tow, Hashi remarked, be ready for anything. Before Hashi stopped on a branch and raised his hand to signal the others to stop, they were all leaping through the branches. Hashi muttered his Imouto's name, Aika. After giving a nod, Aika closed her eyes and began to detect several chakra signatures in the vicinity. There are 12 different chakra signatures surrounding us, Aika replied. Kaya? Hashi asked, referring to the dark-haired woman. After giving a nod, Kaya closed her eyes and concentrated on the enemy shinobi nearby. Kaya had suddenly hurled 12 kunai at the targets with lightning speed. The 12 shinobi were dead when they hit the ground. When Hashi and his cloaked allies hit the ground, they discovered that all but one of the Auto.nin shinobi were dead. Hashi approached the still living Auto.nin, who was clutching his bleeding side from the ripped-out kunai that Kaya had thrown. Then Hashi lifted the Auto.nin into the air by grabbing him by the neck. Hashi was terrified when the Auto.nin glanced down at him and saw a demonic mask. Hashi demanded answers, asking, who is the head Auto.nin? According to the Auto.nin, like I'd ever tell you. The Auto.nin screamed as Hashi inserted his free hand deep into his wound, but Hashi was far from done with him. Using Kurama's chakra to increase his strength, Hashi reached so far inside the Auto.nin that he grabbed one of his ribs, broke it off, and tore it from the Auto.nin. Before adding wind chakra to his arm that was holding the rib bone and stabbing it straight into the Auto.nin's side, which caused him to scream even more in pain and agony. Hashi dropped the Auto.nin, who was screaming in agony from the great pain of having one of his rib bones torn out of his body. Then, Hashi stomped onto the rib, which caused it to go deeper into the Auto.nin's skin and intensifying his scream. Then Hashi knelt down and looked into the Auto.nin's eyes with his red, bandaged eyes, frightening him to death once more. With a cold tone, Hashi said, now answer my question, and just remember, you got plenty of more bones in your body that I can break and use as a weapon. The Auto.nin cried out in terror. Our head officer is General Dai, but he was needed back in Otogakure, so now Raiga Kurasuki is in charge of the place. Tetsuo crossed his arms and remarked, knowing Raiga, there's been a whole hell load of funerals. Hashi got up and said, thanks. Then he reached for Shokun's handle and began removing it from his back, Yane. The Auto.nin screamed, no, before Hashi severed his head. Shokun had been laid back on his back by Hashi. The Konoha.nin's eyes widened in shock as he gazed at the cloaked shinobi. Who are these individuals? Now tired of these five, Neji thought. Aika's ability to track chakra signatures, Hana's skill with kunai, and Hashi's cruelty astounded Lee and Tenten. Sakura and Sasuke were in the same boat as the other three, but for some reason, as they gazed at Hashi, they felt that what he had done was wrong, as if it didn't fit his personality. Hashi asked, well? As he abruptly put his lower jaw mask and straw hat back on. The Konoha.nin thought in shock, fast. Hashi looked at them and said, are you still gonna follow? Cause things are going to get much more difficult from here on out. Of course, said Lee. After nodding, Hashi and the other members of his group leapt into the trees and resumed their journey. We are Konoha.nin. We never back down from a mission, and now Karashi needs us, so we will follow you, they said. Sakura called out the name of one of the cloaked women. Hey, Hana? Hana sort of said, Sakura questioned, What was that whole thing with Hashi just now? Looking at Hashi's back while the masked shinobi leapt from branch to branch, Hana sort of said, "Oh. Hashi's the assassin for our group. As you can tell, we are from a group of special shinobi. I'm used for infiltration. Aika is for tracking. Tetsuo and Kaya are for both infiltration and assassination, but Hashi, he may be our assassin, but he pretty much does everything. He's one of the strongest shinobi in our group." Interested in learning more about Hashi, Tenten joined the conversation and inquired, "So he's a loner?" "Actually, no, quite the opposite really. Everyone in our group knows and loves Hashi. He's sweet, he's kind, cheerful and confident in not only himself, but everyone else in our group as well. He just uses that scary, stone-cold and merciless attitude on his enemies, but to others he's compassionate to them, but he does have his moments. He can be loud, brash and pretty much a baka, but he's the sweetest baka you'll ever meet," Hana said as she gazed at the back of Hashi with eyes full of affection. Sakura and Tenten undoubtedly observed this. Sakura continued to gaze at Hashi. The description Hana had given her reminded her of Naruto, but without the icy demeanor. Then she saw that his left arm had an unraveled bandage. Sakura thought, "He's bandaged. On his left side," before her eyes widened in surprise. Kind, upbeat, self-assured, boisterous, brazen, a baka, a familiar vibe to him, and bandaged on the left side, he briefly caused her to wonder if Hashi was actually a baka. In no way was Naruto a cold-blooded murderer like this Hashi man. "I apologize for how I thought of you, Naruto-kun." Sasuke had the same thought about his brother, but he continued to watch Hashi. Always follow your instincts. That's how Team 7 always performed. No Mura at Sukiakara. After arriving in the village, Hashi and the others were looking around from a building. Auto.nin were harassing the locals while patrolling the area, and they saw depressed and hopeless people everywhere. Everyone's eyes were filled with disgust, rage, and sadness. Neji remarked, "Auto.nin are overrun in this place. We must." But Kaya covered Lee's mouth tenderly before he could say anything more. Kaya whispered to him, "Please Lee.san, but you must stay quiet or else you shall give away our location." Lee gave a nod, and then she let him go. Lee blushed and remarked, "Your hands are very soft, Kaya-chan." Kaya blushed even more as he laughed at what he had said. Kaya smiled and said, "You're not the first to tell me so." Naruto was fortunate to have a mask covering his cheeks. Otherwise, everyone would have noticed his blush. Hashi attracted the attention of the boy with the raven hair by saying, "Hey Sasuke." Although Sasuke was still a little tired of Hashi, he believed that Hashi wouldn't stand in the way of him and the others. "If it's okay, may I ask what is your mission here?" he asked. Sasuke told Hashi, "We came to rescue the chief's daughter after hearing that she had been captured." With his gaze fixed on Sasuke, Hashi said, "I see. Then perhaps we can assist each other." Then Sasuke said, "How so?" "I am very talented in getting information, as you saw before, so I may assist you in getting the information," Hashi replied. "No need, I am Uchiha. I can use my Sharingan to gain the information," Sasuke replied. "True, but there are many Auto.nin here, and not all might know where the chief's daughter may be," Hashi replied. Though he was still tired of Hashi, Sasuke said, "I can assist in finding who knows where she may be. After all, I have a way with people." Abruptly, they heard a cry of agony. With a cut on her cheek from a kunai and Auto.nin was holding, a tearful little girl with dirty blonde hair, no older than 6, caught everyone's attention. The Auto.nin glared at the girl and said, "That'll teach you to bump into someone." With tears streaming from her eyes, the young girl said, "Gomen." The Auto.nin kicked her in the face and said, "Shut up." Her cheek began to bleed more and now has a bruise. A hand grabbed his wrist as the kunai descended, saying, "I bet you think you're so sweet and cute. Well, I bet you won't be any more as I stab out your eye." The man yelled in terror as he turned and saw a man with a demonic face. The girl was terrified when she saw her savior when she looked up to see him. Hashi said in a cold tone, "So you like to gouge out eyes, especially from those of an innocent girl. You worthless piece that is lower than scum." Hashi then used his free hand to tear out the Auto.nin's eyes before letting him go and allowing him to scream in excruciating pain while he held his empty eye sockets. Hashi let the Auto.nin's eyes drop to the ground before stepping on them, saying, "Things like you don't deserve the gift to see this world." The girl was horrified to see the man in the mask approach her. Fearful of becoming like the man who had cut her cheek, the young girl covered her head and closed her eyes, but then she felt a warm hand on her cheek. When the girl opened her eyes, she saw a hand covered in golden flames on her cheek. At first, she wanted to pull away, but the touch was so comforting that she held it with one of her free hands. The hand withdrew from the girl's cheek as the flames subsided, revealing that the girl's injury and wound had been healed by the golden flames. The girl looked up and saw a man wearing a straw hat and a lower half mask. "There, much better. Are you all right, young one?" inquired Hashi. Before giving the man a hug, the girl's eyes were filled with tears. The young girl said, "Arigato." Hashi gave her a hug in return. Hashi inquired, "What is your name, young one?" "Kaya," the young girl said. Kaya, sir." Then Hashi began to laugh, and then he moved away from the girl. Hashi smiled and said, "Kaya, huh? That's actually my friend's name as well." After the girl gave him a smile, he got to his feet, his eyes icy. With Auto.nin all around him and Kaya, Hashi remarked, "More of you, huh?" Hashi remarked, "You bunch are like rats, you know that?" "What did you say?" cried one of the Auto.nin. As a fox Kit leapt from his cloak and onto the ground, Hashi exclaimed, "Kit." Kit stood in front of Kaya and yipped in response, "Please protect Kaya." Kaya looked up at Hashi, who was grinning at her. "Miss Kaya. You don't mind closing your eyes for a moment, do you? I do not wish for a young innocent lady to see such vulgar actions that will take place." Kaya put her hands over her eyes and said, "Hi." All of the Auto.nin suddenly charged at Hashi, but after a short distance, they stopped. With his demonic mask on and Shokin in his hand, Hashi said, "Thank you, Uchiha. I didn't need assistance." Tamashi was a little taken aback by Sasuke's well-known HN. Hashi said, "You're pretty handy with that blade." Sasuke remarked, "Same to you." The Auto.nin in front of Sasuke had cuts with blood oozing from them, while the ones in front of Hashi were literally cut to pieces. He had then completely resheathed Tamashi, and Hashi had placed Shokin back on his back. Hashi's proficiency with Shokin astounded the Konoha.nin. "I'm guessing you four are surprised that Hashi was as fluid with Shokin as your friend is with Tamashi," Kaya responded. Sakura said, "Hi. In our village, Sasuke is considered the greatest swordsman in our village. He has no equal as long as Tamashi is within his grasp, but seeing how skilled Hashi is with his blade, I just can't believe how great he is with it. I think him and Sasuke are both evenly matched in Kenjutsu." Everyone else had the same opinion. Zabuza merely gave them a smile. Zabuza continued to stare down at the two, thinking, I guess they really were meant to be rivals after all. Hashi and Sasuke remained motionless while their allies kept an eye on them. As a wounded and bleeding Auto.nin attempted to crawl away from the two swordsmen, Hashi remarked, "I see we both had the idea of letting one live and still conscious." Hashi approached him and stepped on the Otonin's bleeding chest. Hashi demanded answers, asking, "Do you know where the chief's daughter is?" The Auto.nin stammered in terror, N.No. The Auto.nin groaned in agony as Hashi pressed his foot firmly against his chest. Hashi remarked, "I always know when someone is lying." Liar! Cried the Auto.nin. Fear, anger, the feeling of regret for the many that you have killed and yet feel the sense of thrill of every kill you had done. That is the emotions that you are feeling deep inside. I can read emotions. Hashi said, causing the Auto.nin to be Hashi grabbed the Auto.nin's neck and raised him toward Sasuke, saying, Uchiha. He knows where Akiko is. After nodding and looking into the Auto.nin's eyes, Sasuke closed and reopened them while using his Sharingan. Sasuke deactivated his Sharingan and closed his eyes after a brief pause. At that moment, Hashi sensed the lifeless Auto.nin in his grasp. Hashi then released the dead Auto.nin wearing his lower half mask, with a straw hat in place of his mask. You killed him within his own mind. Impressive. You can become one hell of an assassin that way. Hashi smiled as he joked, but then I'd be out of the job with how many clients you'd get, now wouldn't I? Sasuke simply gave Hashi a strange look. This guy reminds me too much of Kakashi. Sensei, Sasuke remarked. A voice yelled, Kaya. To the blonde girl. When Kaya opened her eyes, she saw her brother and mother. Kaya's brother had burnt sienna hair, a short-sleeved shirt, and shorts, while her mother had bright blonde hair and wore an apron and long-sleeved dress. Kaya cried out, Ka-san, and rushed to embrace her mother. Kaya sobbed as she held her mother, who kept embracing her, and said, Ka-san, I'm so sorry for running away. When Kaya's 8-year-old brother saw all the dead Auto.nin, he exclaimed, Whoa! After seeing the bodies, Kaya's mother asked, What happened here? And concluded that the masked man and the boy with raven hair were responsible for the Auto.nin's deaths. Kaya pointed to Hashi and said, Mama, The man in the black dress with red clouds saved me. Kaya got up, walked over to him, and bowed in appreciation and respect. Thank you for saving my daughter, Mr. Hashi replied. Hashi. When Kaya's brother heard his name, his eyes grew wide. Kaya's brother cried in amazement and surprise, Hashi. As in Hashi no Shi. The demon who killed Kaizo Yurio, and is feared by all of Oto. When Sasuke and his fellow Konoha.nin heard it, they were taken aback. They were shocked to learn that they had been traveling with the man known as the Bridge of Death. They knew that Hashi no Shi was a creature who had once been a man but had turned demon and lived to kill, though no one knew why. Hashi grinned and said, So Oto fears me, eh? My reputation precedes me. While their mother stood in disbelief, seeing that the man who had terrorized the captures of their village was actually a good man to the defenseless, Kaya and her brother were filled with hope. With great hope, Kaya's brother said, So, you're here to save us, right? Hashi knelt down before him. Hashi made the three of them smile when he said, I swear on my life that I shall bring forth a new dawn for this village and its people. You have my word. Then Hashi got to his feet. Before they and their mother left for home, Kaya and her brother nodded in agreement. I think it is best to go back to your house. Tonight might get a little too exciting for you three. He's going to bring peace to our village again, I just know it, expressed Kaya's brother with assurance and optimism. Yeah. Kaya concurred with her. Their mother smiled optimistically, believing that Hashi would restore harmony to their home. Hashi saw their retreating forms and grinned. Everyone's attention was drawn to Hashi's statement, they're lucky. Sasuke raised an eyebrow when Hashi said, They have each other. As long as you're not alone, you'll always find strength to keep finding the new dawn you so desperately seek. Sasuke felt hopeful for some reason. Hashi questioned Sasuke, You got a jutsu to burn these bodies? Sasuke replied with a nod. Before stabbing their swords to the ground and uttering the names of their respective jutsu, the two turned back to back. Amaterasu. Kogen no Hano, Flame of Gold. All of the corpses were abruptly engulfed in golden and black flames that completely destroyed them, leaving not a trace of ash behind. The Amaterasu. In addition to entering one's mind and destroying them from within, this ability is exclusive to the Mangekyo Sharingan. Naruto grinned and concluded, I know for a fact that Sasuke doesn't have the Mangekyo, so it must be the help of Tamashi. Sasuke, you've grown stronger, have you not? Golden Fires. I've never heard of anything like that. Sasuke thought, the more I'm around this guy, the more he surprises me. Hashi looked slightly at Sasuke as the flames went out. Hashi said, You know where she is? Sasuke said, First, answer something for me. At this, Hashi arched an eyebrow. Why are you here, and why are you trying to find her? Asked Sasuke. Hashi simply sighed, sensing that this question would be asked. Hashi shrugged his shoulders and said, I guess it's okay to tell you. Me and the others were hired by an anonymous client to come liberate this place of all the creatures that are playing shinobi, and also save the chief's daughter. Sasuke remarked, So you're mercenaries? Hashi answered, yes and no. Sasuke questioned, What do you mean? Hashi, wearing his demonic mask again, said in a cold tone and with a hint of ki, Now if I told you that, I'd have to kill you. With their kunais ready, the remaining Konoha.nin leapt down and surrounded Hashi. As Hashi stood motionless, dragging out killer intent, they continued to glare at him. With a cheerful tone, Hashi returned to his lower half mask and straw hat combo, grinning and waving, causing everyone, aside from Sasuke and his teammates, to face vault. Just kidding. Hashi turned his head slightly and said, But that doesn't mean I'm going to tell you. According to Sasuke, fair enough. According to the information that Sasuke received from the deceased Oto Nin's mind, she's still in the chief's home that is now owned by some scum that is supplying the Oto.nin. Since Hashi Naruto isn't someone to be defeated by a group of genin, even if they were exceptional from his own village, the rest of Hashi's team leapt down and joined them, not caring about their friend's predicament. Hashi stated, Toru Yurio, weapons supplier and other. Other? Inquired Tenten. Hana responded, such as contraband. Ya no, the usual illegal crap. Sakura and Tenten shuddered when they heard the information, plus the bastard's a sick bastard who likes to torture people in private and have his way with girls. He doesn't care for age. Neji and Lee displayed looks of disgust and rage, while Sasuke remained emotionless but harbored the same feelings as Lee and Neji. Taking care of him and saving Akiko is our goal, and we plan to succeed in doing so, no matter what or who gets in our way. Hashi spoke with a serious voice. Sasuke simply went, HN. Once more. There's a secret passageway underneath the famous Naruto statue that'll lead us towards the chief's place. Sasuke replied. Naruto grinned at that. Learning that he had a statue in this village honoring his honorable sacrifice made him feel proud of the person he once was and, deep down, still is. However, he was curious to see what would happen if he slightly tarnished his good reputation. Hashi laughed and said, "Naruto statue. What's that? A dedication to fish cakes?" But Tamashi's tip landed on his throat. Sasuke glared at Hashi and said in a menacing tone, "Don't you ever insult a monument dedicated to my brother." At this, Naruto blinked, his eyes containing a great deal of surprise. "Brother? Does he think of me as his brother?" This made Naruto smile. Hashi simply closed his eyes and grinned, saying, "Sasuke. Thank you. Alright, I'm sorry. I didn't know that this statue was so important to you." Together with Team Guy, Sakura stated with piercing eyes, "It's important to all of us." "How so?" inquired Aika. Karen, curious about the background of her surrogate brother. For some reason, she and the other Akatsuki members were unaware of some aspects of Naruto's past. Sakura cast a sorrowful glance at the ground. "Naruto Uzumaki, the person who the statue was dedicated to, was our friend, our light and our hero," said Sakura. On the inside, Naruto was shocked and surprised to hear this, especially from Sakura, but he maintained a neutral expression. Ever since he was born, Naruto Uzumaki was hated for being born with a burden. A burden he protected everyone from, especially to those who deserved death. The adults hated Naruto for being a symbol of a terrible event that happened in our village that took away many loved ones, and we of the younger generation were being brainwashed into carrying on that hatred. And we were sickened by it when we learned the truth. Naruto had brought joy to many, even if they never willingly wanted to admit it, and he brought about new friendships that could last an eternity, but one thing Naruto brought was truth. He showed that no matter what people say and what they think of you, you can still prove to them that they are wrong about you by showing them who you are without fear of what they think of your true self. Sakura started to cry as she remembered the man she loved. The odds he defied and the people he proved wrong, and the guts he showed. What Sakura wouldn't give to have him in front of her and grab those lips of his with her own. Ironically, she is unaware that the man she loves is actually standing in front of her because he is donning a hat and a mask. The statue is more than just a monument to him. It's the symbol of what everyone in our generation and the next wished to be. Sakura concluded with a look of pride and determination, her eyes still teary from the memories of her deceased lover. On his last mission he showed his true self, a great shinobi and a greater friend with a gorgeous heart of gold that no one could ever match. Sadly, it cost him his life, but he left behind so much that would guarantee to bring so much hope and courage and much more that our village needed. With tears in her eyes and a renewed respect for her surrogate brother, Aika, Karen remarked, That's so beautiful." Hearing this lovely recollection of the young Uzumaki made Hana, Fu and Kaya, Haku's feelings for him even stronger. Tetsuo, Zabuza simply grinned proudly, realizing that his pupil had, without even realizing it, transformed his esteemed village. Hashi. Naruto was stunned, but only on the inside because he was only looking out. He had no idea that his one act of selflessness so long ago had brought new light and hope to the future as well as to his own generation. In fact, it brought tears to his eyes. "It seems this Naruto kid meant a lot to you, Pinky," Tetsuo replied. Sakura put her hand over her heart, smiled tenderly at the five, and said, "Of course he did. After all, I love him." Naruto was completely stunned. Although he appeared emotionless, when he heard Sakura's words, he felt as though the sun and moon were striking him simultaneously. Naruto wanted nothing more than to rip off his mask, hold her, and tell her the same thing, but he had a job to do. She loves me, he thought. Sakura looked surprised as Hashi approached her and took her other hand. Sakura blushed as Hashi kissed her hand and said, "My sincerest apologies for my unintentional teasing, Sakura-san. I didn't know this statue meant so much to you. I hope you can forgive me." Sakura withdrew her hand and said, "Sorry Hashi, but dead or alive, my Naruto-kun will still have my heart. Besides, you're older than me, right?" The Konoha. Nin's eyes widened as Hashi said, "I'm 14. The fox kit yipped to Hashi and said, "And I'm sorry Sakura-san, I was only just showing politeness." Mamoru grinned and remarked, "That was more than being polite, sly fox." Hashi said, "Shut up kid." The fox kit simply protruded his tongue at Hashi. "You understand him?" inquired Lee. As he leaned over to pick up Mamoru, Hashi remarked, "Like I understand you. Meet Ashura, my best friend and partner. I usually call him Kit." "Ashura." Mamoru waved his paw before saluting. "Kawaii." Tenten and Sakura cried out. "Ashura." Mamoru told Hashi. "Naruto, Not that I don't like attention, but I think we should head to the statue. Yeah, you're right. Haruto. Hashi concurred. Before poking his head out of the collar, Ashura. Mamoru leapt into Hashi's cloak and into the concealed pouch inside. As he and his companions made their way to the village center, Hashi remarked, "My good friend here suggests that we head to the statue, shall we?" "How do you know you are heading in the right direction?" Neji responded. As he and the others kept moving forward, Hashi remarked, "Statues are always in the center of a village." After glancing at Sasuke, the genin simply shrugged. Sasuke followed them and remarked, "He's not wrong." Sakura trailed Team Gaia directly in the direction of the Great Naruto statue. The Great Naruto statue, a massive statue of a 13-year-old boy with a jumpsuit, spiky hair, 6 whisker-like birthmarks on his face, 3 on each cheek, and a Hatai.8 with the Konoha symbol in the middle wrapped around his forehead stood in the middle of the village. You might wonder what makes this statue so amazing. Incredibly, it's made of gold. As Naruto stared at the statue of himself from a year ago, he thought, holy crap, they went all out with this thing. Sakura smiles affectionately and sheds new tears as she looks up at the statue. Without giving it any thought, Sakura blurted out, "What I'd give to cup those adorable cheeks of his." With all eyes on Sakura, Sasuke remarked, "You realize you said that out loud?" In response, Sakura simply punched Sasuke in the head. Sasuke said, "Ow." Tenten simply laughed, while Neji ignored Lee's tears of sorrow that Sakura's heart still belonged to Naruto and instead gazed at the statue with a great deal of respect for the one genin who had vanquished and saved him from an empty path. While Tetsuo, Zabuza and Ashura, Mamoru were laughing at the scene, Hashi. Naruto moved his collar with his finger and steam emerged from his clothing, which was witnessed by his allies but fortunately not by the Konoha.nin. Aika. Karen was also laughing, while Hana, Fu and Kaya, Haku remained silent but mentally said, "Game on," because they weren't going to lose their crush to this girl. Hot damn, Naruto thought as the image of Sakura and him lying on a bed while Sakura caressed his whisker marks and whispered some adult things into his ear, causing him to blush profusely and bleed from the nose. Then, in his mind, Naruto heard his father laughing and his inner Biju Kurama laughing. Minato continued to laugh and said, "Wow Naruto, looks like you really do have a little of Jiraiya pops inside of you." Kurama continued to laugh and said, "I couldn't agree more." Kushina yelled, "Bakas, the both of you. My Sochi is not allowed to do such adults things until he is of correct age." Naruto became anxious as his mother continued to lecture him. "But I approve of your future wife Sochi, hot-headed but friendly, won't let you walk all over her, will put you in your place if you get out of line, hits hard and is just like me. I approve Sochi, I approve. I can't wait for the day you reveal yourself to her and I get to meet her and talk about how you were as a child from how cute you were as a baby, and talk about your marriage and future children." Kushina. Ba. Chan. "Oh, I love the sound of that," Kushina said, making Naruto blush more and more. Kurama laughed and Minato sighed. Tsunade was the same way, he recalled. When Minato was a genin, he was always depressed because he had no one to turn to after his team missions were over, no parents, no family. However, one day he walked into a bar by mistake and was being harassed by some shinobi. Tsunade came to his rescue and offered to sit with him. Ever since, they have spent time together, and Tsunade has taken on the role of a mother to him, taking care of him like a real mother would. When he and Kushina clicked, she would make fun of him by telling him old stories about his foolish behavior that she thought was cute, and she would tease and playfully threaten Minato by telling his kids to call him grandma. It's ironic that the woman he had thought of as his mother was actually his biological mother, but that didn't make those awkward situations any less awkward. It was now Naruto's turn to experience the pain of his elderly father. "I hope you'll get used to it, son. Stay strong," Minato grinned. Kurama and Minato laughed, and Kushina giggled as Naruto thought, "I better find Akane soon. I at least need someone to suffer with me." To conceal his face, Hashi. Naruto tipped his hat. "Okay Mr. Copywheel. Where's the entrance to the secret passageway, if you don't mind sharing?" Hashi responded. Sasuke moved in the direction of the statue and the plaque that contained numerous admirable descriptions of Naruto. Courageous, heroic, selfless, loving, fighter, guardian, golden, hearted, champion, protector, man of the people, inspiring, strong by his own convictions, hopeful, devoted, and a shinobi. Every single one of these descriptions of Naruto was accurate. Sasuke raised his hand and surrounded it with a chakra aura. Then he touched 4 of the words on the plaque with his hands. Selfless is the first word. Guardian is the second word. Of is the third word. Hope is the fourth word. Selfless protector of hope. The statue's foot shifted, opening to reveal stairs that descended further into a maze. I think it's best that only two shall go, while the rest stay out here and deal with the rest of the auto.nin. Hashi responded. The other members of Hashi's group understood what Hashi was saying and nodded. While they found and destroyed the auto bases, he was going to go rescue Akiko. Sakura and Hashi. Naruto both said, "I'll go." The two exchanged glances. Sakura stood her ground and remarked, "I'm a stubborn girl, don't think you'll convince me not to go." Sakura was quite stubborn, and although Naruto didn't want her to go and endanger her life, he knew she was right. Hashi raised his hand as golden flames swirled around it and said, "All right." Sakura nodded as she and Hashi descended the stairs together, saying, "Just stay close." Sasuke said, "If you return in the same manner as Akiko, the plaque will be in front of you. Just cover your hand with chakra and touch the words that make the strong believer." As the door began to close, Hashi's group was prepared to move when the entrance closed once more, but Lee blocked their path. "Hold on. We are all here to liberate this place of Otogakure's tyranny, so we must work together, not divide," Lee replied. Kaya said, "Actually, maybe you can assist us." With Sakura and Hashi. Naruto Sakura trailed behind Hashi, who had been using his golden flame technique to use his hand as a torch the entire time. Sakura continued to look straight ahead, but she frequently glanced at Hashi. Hashi said, "Something I can help you with?" Sakura gave him a long look before responding. Sakura said, "Just who are you?" Hashi raised an eyebrow as he turned to face Sakura. "I mean, before you showed that you were a man who smiles at people like myself and yet you kill those like the auto.nin without mercy or remorse, it just makes me think, who are you?" Hashi continued to walk silently. Hashi. Naruto replied, "Sometimes I'm not even sure myself." Sakura questioned, "What do you mean?" Sakura jumped a little in surprise that he heard them when Hashi asked, "Remember the talk you had with Hana, before we made it to Sukiakara?" Sakura simply gave Hashi a melancholy look and said, "She told you everything. I'm a baka." Sakura inquired, "Why do you see yourself that way?" "Because I don't know who I am half the time. I have something that reminds me of who I was and what I convince myself what I still am, but I just wonder, ya know?" Hashi replied. Sakura's left arm bore a tattoo. Sakura answered, "Yeah, I think I know." Hashi halted in his tracks, causing Sakura to follow suit. "My Shisho once told me the best way to answer such a question is to remember your past and remember what made you the way you are." Hashi. Naruto asked himself, has it really been that easy? Sakura gave Hashi a melancholy glance. She now understands his confusion. "It all started as long as I could remember, Hashi." Naruto began walking once more, Sakura trailing behind. "People never really liked me for reasons I never knew why. I tried standing up for myself, but I kept getting knocked down. I remember this girl I saw, she was crying, because she was being picked on. I wanted to stand up for her, but I was afraid that she'd hate me for being useless. Luckily she was saved by another girl, which made me happy, but also made me hate myself, because I felt I missed out on proving I was something good." Hashi. Naruto spoke as Sakura looked at him with interest. "Then one day, I saw her. The girl who was crying. She started standing up for herself one day, and even when she was hurt, she never let her tears be shown in front of the ones who hurt her. I didn't understand why, but as I saw her keep coming back, ready for anything, I felt inspired by her." Sakura questioned, "Inspired?" "I realized that thanks to her that it never matters if you keep getting knocked down. What matters is that you keep getting back up and never show them that they won, because you just won't allow those who don't deserve a victory to win. She inspired me to be that way, she inspired me to become stronger, and every day, she kept on inspiring me so much that I fell in love with her." Hashi. Naruto stated. This caused Sakura's heart to begin to race. But she was in love with someone else. Sakura's heart suddenly began to tremble. Sakura said, "So what did you do?" Sakura stared at him as Hashi. Naruto said, "Easy, I never let them see me cry. I kept getting back up, in hopes that she'd give me a chance, but every time, she kept throwing me down. I never gave up, because she made me that way." Sakura looked up at this. "If I gave up, then I'd lose the one thing that gave me my strength, so even though I knew it was futile, I didn't let it stop me. I just kept getting back up and keep on going after my strength, cause without it, I know for a fact that I'd never be happy." Hashi. Naruto stated. Sakura's eyes were sad as she gazed at the ground. "You must have felt that way, Naruto-kun." Sakura pondered as a tear ran down her cheek. To regain Sakura's attention, Hashi. Naruto remarked, "Then came a day I could never forget. Sakura gazed sorrowfully at the masked teenager and said, I had saved her from almost having her life taken away, but after that, I haven't seen her again. After that I met up with the people who I work with, but I still think about her and if she's happy. I've killed, tortured, and scarred many for my group, but I always wonder, what would she think of me after all I've done? Would she even think I am human or the person she once knew? I desperately wish to know the answer and it's killing me to find out. Hashi simply stopped and stared at the ground. Sakura noticed a single tear in Hashi's eye and said, I miss her so much that it's killing me from the inside out. Hashi turned to face Sakura as she put her hand on his cheek and wiped away the tear. Please, tell me. What would you say if you saw her again? Asked Sakura. Despite the sadness in his eyes, Naruto's mask prevented her from seeing his smile. I'd say, you mean more to me than anything, and that I'll always love you even after the end of time, even if it isn't possible I don't care, because that's how I truly feel for you. I'll always love you, even if you never love me, and I'll always protect the thing you always found ugly about yourself, because I see it as the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. And I'd gladly do anything to see you smile, because I adore your smile. That smile makes me smile and cry tears of joy whether on the inside or out because it's just so beautiful. I will kill, I will cry, I will bleed, I will die, I would sell my soul, I would do anything to see you smile, even if it means I'll never know happiness again, because if you smile, then I know that everything horrible I have ever done, the blood I've let dirty my hands and the nightmares I've created for myself, it was all worth it, and it will make me smile. Hashi. Naruto said with tears in his eyes as he stared into Sakura's equally tear and wondrously beautiful eyes. The two began leaning in toward one another, their lips edging closer, but they stopped as they withdrew as they gazed into each other's eyes and said, I love you. Hashi. Naruto said, I'm sorry. Sakura said, it's okay. I apologize too. Sakura followed Hashi. Naruto as he continued down the path, saying, let's keep moving. As Sakura continued to follow Hashi, she broke her heart. What had just affected me? I asked myself, Sakura said. Now I'm crying because of that. Using the Konoha.nin. Numerous Auto.nin were engaged in combat with the Konoha.nin. As she used thrown kunai to impale several Auto.nin, Tenten questioned, why are we doing this again? As he kicked several Auto.nin, Lee yelled, we're helping Kaya Chan and the others by creating a distraction for them while they get rid of Otogakure's tyranny over Sukiakara, into the air. Neji used his Juken on the numerous Auto.nin and asked, and how exactly are they going to do so? Sasuke cut and sliced the Auto.nin with Tamashi, saying, they're serious enough to do so, best not to ask questions and just keep on fighting. Abruptly, there were several explosions in the village. Tenten cried out, what the hell was that? Ignore it. We have to continue fighting these pieces of scum. Sasuke replied. Then Sasuke disappeared from the scene and reappeared with Tamashi in its scabbard, slightly unsheathed, and surrounded by numerous Auto.nin. All of the Auto.nin behind him were sliced to pieces as Sasuke completely resheathed Tamashi. Tenten gazed at Sasuke in amazement, thinking, wow, Sasuke really has gotten stronger. You have grown stronger over time, Sasuke.kun, and I am proud to be your enduring opponent. Lee smiled as he thought. Oh Lee, what will we ever do with you? Uchiha, you've come a long way since Naruto's passing. Despite our differences, I appreciate that you decided to support Hinata Sama during her training. With a slight smile, Neji thought, arigato. With Sakura and Hashi. Naruto as some filthy debris fell from the roof, Hashi. Naruto and Sakura heard the explosion. As Sakura put it, what was that? As he and Sakura began to run farther into the cavern, Hashi. Naruto remarked, our distraction. We better pick up the pace. Tower Sukiakara, a group of cloaked shinobi were perched on a tower close to the chief's residence, gazing down at the village and witnessing the numerous explosions that were occurring all around it. The many bases that housed the Auto.nin, their supplies, intelligence, and other necessities were the source of those explosions. With a massive hunch on his back, one of the cloaked figures grinned as he observed the bases burning in the village's numerous fires. The cloaked figures then leapt down from the tower, looking for the walking dead. Looks like we're going to have some nice funerals today. With Sakura and Hashi. Naruto Sakura and Hashi. Naruto discovered a hatch door, which was probably the chief's house entrance. Hashi turned to Sakura and said, you ready for this? Sakura looked at the door and nodded. Sakura then put her hand on her tattoo of the pink and golden fox and kissed it. Sakura said with a determined expression, Watashi wa might, Watashi no Shugo Tenshi. Watch over me, my guardian angel. Before he took Sakura's hand and forced her to look at him, Hashi. Naruto gave her a joyful glance and a smile. Naruto nodded and thought, I will, Sakura. Sakura smiled and gave him a nod before they turned to face the hatch door and opened it. I promise. Sakura and Hashi. Naruto pushed aside a rug above the hatch door and surveyed the space, noticing that it was a luxurious bedroom. Hashi. Naruto remarked, this must be the chief's bedroom. Sakura remarked, of course, should have expected this. Hashi. Naruto said, wait, do you hear that? Hear what? Inquired Sakura. Hashi. Naruto remarked, there it is again. What is it? Inquired Sakura, after carefully listening with his keen ear. Hashi. Naruto's eyes widened as he recognized what it was. Hashi. Naruto stated, it's a cry for help, and it's from Akiko. Chan. As he leapt out of the hatch and fled the room. Sakura yelled, Hashi wait, as she hurriedly pursued the masked swordsman. Sakura heard cries of pain and suffering coming down the hallway as she left the room. Sakura saw freshly cut Auto.Nin corpses as she ran down it. Oh my Kami, he accomplished all of this in a very short period of time. Who is he? Hashi continued running and slashing at any Auto.Nin he came across until he came to a door where the cries were coming from. At that point, he burst through the door and witnessed Toru attempting to rape Akiko. Furious, Hashi lunged at Toru, snatched his through, and then slammed into the wall, causing him to be indented. Taking a chance, Akiko reached for a well-known orange jacket and wrapped it around herself before bolting from the room. Hashi was filled with rage and hatred as she gazed at Toru, who truly resembled his brother in every way. Hashi squeezed Toru's throat and he choked out, who the hell are you? Hashi said in a cold, irate voice, that man who's going to cause your head hanging on a stick in the center of the village. Akiko continued to run while crying until she heard footsteps ahead of her. In a panic, Akiko hurried through the door beside her, closed it, and hoped for the best. Akiko was standing close to the door when she heard footsteps running past the room where she was hiding. She sighed in relief to learn that Sakura, not an enemy, had run past. When Sakura eventually arrived at a demolished door, Hashi was holding Toru's throat and the plump man was pressed into the wall. Sakura's eyes widened in shock as Toru yelled, whoever you are, you won't survive. I have the strongest Auto.Nin ready anytime to protect me, after all, he killed the Kyuubi Jinchuriki. Hashi simply squeezed Toru's neck, causing him pain. Hashi demanded answers, asking, who is he and how did he do it? Toru asked, why should I answer that? But Hashi then directed Kurama's chakra at the hand holding his neck, heating it up and burning it as he squeezed it. Fearfully, Toru replied, his name is General Dai and I think it had to do with explosive tags in a volcano. Sakura gritted her teeth and clenched her fists in rage. My Naruto-kun died because of this General Dai. I'll murder him, Sakura thought angrily. Sakura cried out, where is he? Hashi. Naruto addressed the pink-haired kunoichi by calling her, Sakura. Wait outside and guard me, okay? But, with a genuine smile beneath his mask, Hashi turned to face her and said, no buts. Don't worry about Dai yet, okay? If he was the head officer, then he must be powerful, and my gut tells me that he's stronger than you are, so just wait and get stronger, okay? Sakura looked at him for a moment before nodding, saying, trust me. Sakura turned toward the door and started to move, but she came to a complete stop. Punch him in the face for me, before you kill him, okay? Said Sakura. Hashi gave a nod. Hashi. Naruto said, I will. Sakura left while guarding Hashi from any trespassers. With his eyes glowing red and his demonic mask on, Hashi turned to face Toru. Toru was terrified by Hashi's mask and thought he was the Shinigami, so he stared at him with a terrified expression on his face. Hashi said in an icy voice, time to die, Toru. Toru shouted in terror, fuck you. Do you know who I am? Smirking behind his mask, Hashi remarked, do you know who I am? Funny, that's the same thing your brother said before I killed him. Toru's expression was one of shock and fear, and with good reason. He was looking at the man who had murdered his brother, and he was the next in line. After directing a small amount of wind chakra into his fist, Hashi struck Toru's ribcage, shattering it. Toru felt Hashi twist his fist into his body, and he screamed in pain and agony. Then, as Toru screamed, Hashi removed it and applied pressure with his fingers to his forehead, making tiny holes that were leaking blood. Hashi then withdrew his fingers, clenched them, and began punching Toru's face repeatedly until it was bloody and deformed. Toru screamed even louder as Hashi threw him to the ground and stomped on the back of his head before grabbing his arm and yanking it until the entire limb was torn from his body. Before he pulled it from his back and stabbed it through Toru's back, causing him to shriek in excruciating pain as Kurama's burning chakra began to burn him from the inside out, Hashi grabbed the handle of Shokin and sent Kurama's chakra into it. Then, he grabbed Toru's head and began tugging on his head. Before Hashi tore Toru's head entirely from his body, Toru let out a cry of pain and agony. Holding Toru's head in his hand, Hashi gazed at the horrified face of the miserable man. After releasing Toru's head, Hashi raised his leg and applied wind chakra to his foot before stomping on his head, leaving a bloody mess around his foot that included blood, mangled flesh, and pieces of Toru's brain. As he removed Shokin from Toru's back and put it back on his, Hashi declared, "It's done." He then made his way to the exit. Sakura was looking straight ahead when Naruto left the room. Sakura turned to face Hashi. Naruto, who said, "I really wished you didn't have to hear all that." As he gazed at her, Naruto wore his straw hat and lower half mask. "Someone as innocent and kind-hearted as you shouldn't hear or even be near such disgusting acts." Naruto said. Naruto gestured ahead before Sakura could even reply. Naruto said, "I sense Akiko down the hall, follow me." Sakura trailed behind him as he moved down the hall. Inside a room, Akiko was cowering in terror, praying that help would arrive quickly. Abruptly, the room's door opened, revealing a man wearing a straw hat and a lower half mask. Naruto remarked, "Good to see you're still alive." When Akiko screamed in terror, she clutched her most valuable item, the jacket the boy who had saved her had given her, closer to her body. Sakura said, "Akiko." As she approached the girl, Sakura knelt in front of the girl and said, "Akiko, it's me, Sakura. Remember." Akiko yelled, "Stay away from me." As she attempted to strike Sakura, but Sakura deflected the blow. Akiko attempted to strike Sakura with a hook punch, but the pinkett leapt back. "Let go of me, you're not Sakura, you're just another one of those Odo monsters playing games with my head again. I am not some toy to play around with," Akiko exclaimed. Sakura turned to face Naruto when he grabbed her shoulder. Sakura nodded when Naruto said, "Let me handle this, I can very convincing. Trust me, you think you can leave the room. I don't want anyone of those Odo nins disturbing us." Naruto replied. With some hesitancy, Sakura nodded before leaving and shutting the door. After removing one of his gloves, Hashi went to the door and made a number of hand gestures before placing his bare palm on it to create a silencer seal that would prevent anyone from hearing what he and Akiko were saying. Hashi approached Akiko and knelt down in front of her, frightening her. "Stay away from me," exclaimed Akiko. Hashi grabbed his jacket and said, "I see you still have it." Akiko gave him an inquisitive look. With his now cerulean eyes, Hashi remarked, "You've really grown into a young beautiful woman, Akiko-chan." Akiko gazed into his eyes, which were so familiar and captivating. "Who are you?" Akiko asked, her mind demanding an answer. Hashi grinned as he removed his mask and hat, exposing his blonde hair, whisker marks, and the crushed, scarred left side of his face. "Naruto-kun," Akiko uttered as tears welled up in her eyes. Before she jumped at him and gave him a big hug, she had a joyful smile on her face, and Naruto gave her his famously big, goofy grin. "It really is you. You're alive," Akiko cried out with unbelievable delight. Naruto gave the hug back with a smile. Akiko was overjoyed. Akiko has always harbored feelings for the sun-kissed blonde since Naruto saved her, and now that he is still alive and ready to save her once more, her happiness and affection for him have skyrocketed. "Yeah, I am, but you have to keep it a secret, even from the Konoha.nin, okay?" Naruto replied. There must have been a good reason why Naruto didn't want anyone to know he was still alive, but Akiko didn't know. "Oh. Okay, Naruto-kun, I promise I won't tell anyone about you being alive. If..." "Oh my god," Naruto thought. With a strong look of resolve in her eyes, Akiko said, "You agree to marry me?" "Nani?" exclaimed Naruto in surprise. Naruto asked, his expression of shock still visible, "Are you serious?" Akiko said, "Yes," with a heavy heart. Naruto questioned, "Are you sure? I mean, isn't there another way?" "Oh Sakura," Akiko yelled the name of the pinkett. Okay, I'll marry you, but only when I reveal that I'm still alive." Naruto replied. Naruto was certain Sakura wasn't very patient in these kinds of circumstances, so he had to move quickly even though he knew the silencing seal was still in place. "Deal," Akiko yelled as she gave Naruto a hug. "Oh, I can't wait." With his straw hat and lower half mask on, Naruto said, "Yes you can, come on." He then grabbed her hand and led her out the door. Sakura took Akiko's hand and returned to the room as Hashi. Naruto opened the door. Sakura closed the door after saying, "She needs clothes." Hashi and Naruto waited outside until the door opened, revealing Sakura and Akiko, who were both wearing Naruto's jacket and Sakura's extra clothes. Sakura said, "Okay, we can go now." As he turned to face the hallway and went over a number of hand signals, Hashi said, "Good." As a group of Oto-nin rounded the corner, they were struck head-on by the incredibly powerful attack, which killed them and sent them through a huge hole that ran the length of the house. Futon. Rinkuden. Hashi. Naruto cried as he inhaled a great deal of air before he blew out a fierce drilling bullet of air down the hall. As he carried Akiko in a bridal manner, Hashi. Naruto said, "Then let's hustle." Sakura trailed behind. Hashi. Naruto touched the earcom and radioed his fellow Akatsuki members as they leapt out of the chief's way. Through his earcom, Naruto declared, "Mission accomplished. Toru is dead and Akiko is safe." Through her earcom, Karen said, "Good timing, cause we need help." "What's wrong?" exclaimed Hashi. Naruto. While using his earcom, Tetsuo Zabuza stated, "My old colleague has some groupies." This small bit of information caused Hashi. Naruto to narrow his eyes. Before ending the call, Hashi. Naruto said, "I'll be there soon. I just need to make sure Akiko and the Konoha-nin are safe before I join in the party." "Can you feel Sasuke's chakra, Kurama?" Without a doubt, he uses Tamashi as a chakra beacon. Naruto stated this while mentally connecting with his Biju. Kurama gave Naruto directions to his bastard Kurama's words, "Not mine, Uchiha friend," saying, "Already got it kit." Hashi. Naruto led Sakura to where he sensed Sasuke's chakra and said, "I'm sensing Sasuke's chakra. Follow me." In Hana. Fu's Hiden. Rinpogakur no Jutsu, secret. Hiding in scale powder technique, the Kurosuke family and the Akatsuki members were concealed. A few of the hooded shinobi were slashed away by Tetsuo Zabuza, leaving their torsos with deep cuts. They were rendered inoperable after Kaya Haku threw numerous senbon at them. Hana. Fu was using her wings to fly through her jutsu and slash as many enemy shinobi as she could. Karen defeated as many members of the Kurosuke family as she could by using the taijutsu that Obito and Konan had taught her. Raiga and another cloaked shinobi were in the hidden jutsu, looking down at the entire battle while sensing the numerous chakra signatures colliding. Raiga had a hunch on his back that was hidden by his cloak. The person in the cloak grinned and remarked, "Boy, they're really going at it down there." "Yes, too bad my men are being overpowered by these unknown people, but these cloaked four are proving worthy of a well-deserved funeral." Raiga replied. A voice appeared out of nowhere and said, "Raiga, speaking of funerals, when I die, will you give me one?" Raiga responded to the enigmatic voice, "No, absolutely not. You're not going to die, understand?" The other hooded figure remarked, "Not like your men." Inside the powdered mist, something suddenly crashed in the center of the battlefield, and it quickly began to destroy the Kurosuke family. Hashi in his demon mask stood in the center of the ring of other cloaked Akatsuki members as the mist cleared. Raiga smirked and remarked, "Hashi no shi. The man who was the nightmare of every Oto-nin to exist. I'm not sure I'll even cry at his funeral." Hashi remarked darkly, "Raiga Kurosuke. I've heard some sick crap about you, how would you like your own funeral?" Raiga simply laughed at this. "That's a new one, but I'm afraid I can't think of anyone who would cry for me at my funeral." Raiga replied. Hashi pointed Shokin at the swordsman and said, "How about tears of joy? 'Cause that's what I'll be shedding at your funeral." The hooded man beside Raiga declared, "The Shokin. He's mine." Raiga pulled out both of his dual blades and pointed them at the stormy sky, saying, "Fine, but allow me to give you some fighting space first." The twin swords that connected them to the storm clouds were suddenly struck by lightning bolts. Raiga exclaimed, "Ikazuki no Kiba." As lightning bolts descended from the sky, causing a tremendous explosion that engulfed the cloaked figures. Raiga remarked, "Well my, you mysterious figures sure are surprising." He and his fellow cloak member were behind the cloaked beings. Raiga inquired, "So what is it that you want?" "To free this village and everyone who lives here, and you are standing in the way of this village's hope for peace," Hashi responded. Raiga remarked, "Peace? That is just a child's dream." "Well, children do have more innocence than you, so it's understandable, but then again isn't that something all of us in our position envy of them?" Hashi replied. Raiga grinned as she became more intrigued by the man in the mask. I like the way you think. Looks like you gave me a reason to cry at your funeral, Raiga replied. Hashi stated, if you don't have yours first, that is. The cloaked man beside the missing Kiri.nin said, remember Raiga, he's mine. Raiga waved his hand and said, yes, I know. Go nuts Aoi. When Naruto heard the name of the person who had taken his great-granduncle's renowned sword, his eyes grew wide. Given that Naruto is a senju and that this man, identified as Aoi Rokusho, had committed crimes against both his village and his own clan, Tetsuo. Zabuza asked, Hashi, what do you want to do? Raiga felt that he had heard Tetsuo's voice before and arched an eyebrow. Hashi. Naruto vanished, then reappeared in front of Aoi, grabbed him by the throat, and vanished to lower ground, saying, Aoi is all mine. Tetsuo. Zabuza cracked his knuckles and remarked, guess that means that it's just you and me then. Zabuza? Raiga asked, mentioning his former colleague's name. I don't believe this. So you actually remembered the sound of my charming voice, Zabuza replied. The voice from earlier giggled when Raiga said, if by charming you mean the sound of sandpaper being used against a rhino's kneecap, then yes, it's very charming. As the seal on his back broke, revealing Kabikirabocho, also known as the executioner's blade or decapitating carving knife, in a cloud of smoke, Zabuza declared, well, enough of this polite conversation crap. With a smile on his face, Zabuza reached for the handle of his favorite knife and aimed the blade at Raiga. Zabuza smiled behind his bandages and said, how about we get to the main event? With the tips of his blades aimed at Zabuza, Raiga assumed his Kenjutsu stance. Raiga grinned and said, let's. In order to allow his allies to battle Raiga while he attended to some business, Hashi. Naruto appeared at the lower level. Before the former Konoha.nin could kick him away, Hashi let go of Aoi and leapt back. Aoi, gritting his teeth and massaging his throat, remarked, bastard, now my throat's going to have your finger marks printed around it. Hashi. Naruto said, Aoi Rokusho, missing Konoha.nin, Jonin rank and thief of the legendary Raijin no Ken. Sword of the Thunder God. Aoi pulled down his hood to reveal his face, which included violet eyes and green shoulder-length hair, and remarked, well, I see my reputation precedes me. So I'm guessing you want to send me back to Konoha so I can receive judgment and the Raijin no Ken back, Aoi concluded. Hashi. Naruto then removed Shokin from his back and aimed it at Aoi, saying, my family's sword back. Yes. Sending you back to Konoha? No, Hashi's eyes glowed red, causing Aoi to perspire a little. I'm going to be the one who delivers judgment upon you. As Aoi finished saying, family's sword? Is this guy a? Hashi rushed at him and swung his sword in his direction. Aoi swiftly removed the Raijin no Ken and attempted to parry it, but the legendary lightning sword was pushed away by the sword's sheer strength. The big sword stabbed the top of Aoi's shoulder, causing him to scream as he leapt back and grabbed his shoulder. Aoi was able to avoid being stabbed through the head by moving to the side. Damn! Aoi thought angrily, now aimed at the masked man in front of him, that sword not only stabs, but somehow it burns. Hashi suddenly materialized above Aoi and slashed down at him. Aoi was able to roll out of the way, but Hashi stabbed his sword into the ground, held onto the handle tightly, and supported his entire body in the air. This allowed Hashi to kick Aoi's face, causing Aoi to slide into the ground and dig up debris. Slowly, Aoi sat up and gave Hashi a glare as she fell to the ground. Aoi swore at the masked swordsman, damn you. Hashi raised his voice and yelled, you moron, get up. If you're going to wield such a sword, then use it. Aoi stood and readied his pilfered sword, gritting his teeth. Aoi charged at Hashi and began slashing at him, shouting, you asked for it. However, Hashi continued to parry and block the legendary sword with Shokin. Hashi felt let down by the fight he was in because Aoi was only ruining his great-grandfather's reputation and didn't even know how to wield his sword correctly. Hashi grabbed Aoi's wrist as he thrust the Raijin no Ken, just inches from his face. With shocked and terrified eyes, Aoi gazed at Hashi. How disgraceful. You convinced a child to steal a blade for you and you can't even use it properly. Hashi replied. When Aoi tried to kick Hashi, he clenched his teeth in rage. However, Hashi blocked the kick with his knee and then gave Aoi a headbutt in the forehead, causing him to back up in agony. Then, Hashi attempted a thrust, but Aoi swiftly moved in front of him to create a shield, but it still sent him skidding back. Hashi suddenly materialized in front of Aoi, punched him hard in the stomach, causing him to spit blood, then grabbed the collar of his hood and began beating his face with his fist, knee, and head. Aoi then tried to kick his masked opponent away, but Hashi grabbed his foot with his free hand. Aoi then tried to use the stolen sword to decapitate Hashi, forcing Hashi to duck before releasing him as he leapt back. "You son of a bitch!" exclaimed Aoi, covering his now bleeding nose. From inside Naruto's head, Kushina cried out, "What did that bastard say? Maybe if you were more skilled in Kenjutsu and not depend on it so much that it made you neglect your other skills, you'd actually land a scratch on me." Hashi continued to stare at Aoi. "Shut up!" Aoi screamed, his scowl at Hashi growing more intense. Hashi said, "Answer me this. Where is Idate Morino?" Aoi said, "He's no concern to you. Maybe not to me, but he is to Ibiki Morino. A Konoha.nin. Hashi replied. "Oh, I get it. You want to return Idate back to Konoha by giving him to Konoha.nin. But he's a missing .nin as well, remember?" Aoi replied. To Aoi's surprise, Hashi said, "I know that, which is why I'm not going to give him back to Konoha, at least not yet." Aoi questioned, "What do you mean?" Hashi grasped Shokun's handle and said, "I'm afraid that's none of your concern since you won't be around long enough to know." Suddenly, Aoi threw an umbrella high into the air, and as it opened, senbon needles shot out of it and directly in Hashi's direction. Hashi easily parried the senbons away from him after slashing them. Aoi seized the opportunity and lunged toward Hashi, prepared to attack, but as he approached, Aoi was ambushed and covered in tree roots. "This jutsu, it's..." Aoi thought in disbelief. As he made a ram sign, causing the wood's roots to grab and break his fingers, causing him to scream and drop the Raijin no Ken, Hashi remarked, "I see you're shocked, so you can't make a jutsu." Aoi gritted his teeth in agony and uttered, "So, you are a senju." Aoi turned to see another Hashi next to the masked swordsman and said, "Well, actually he's a clone of one." The new Hashi said, "Mind if I cut in?" Before he disappeared in a cloud of smoke, the Hashi in front of Aoi uttered the words, "Go right ahead, boss." "A shadow clone?" cried Aoi incredulously. The real Hashi said, "That's right." He raised his hand in a single ram sign, tightening the roots around Aoi and causing pain in her bones and body. "You caused crimes against my family, taking my great-grand-uncle's sword." Aoi exclaimed in disbelief, "Great-grand-uncle? Wait, but that's impossible. You're dead." After untying the ribbons securing his mask, Hashi removed it to show off his half-crushed face, sun-kissed blonde hair, and whiskers. Aoi exclaimed in disbelief, "Naruto. So you are alive?" Naruto continued to glare at Aoi, saying, "Of course I am. You think a giant rock would actually keep me down?" When asked honestly, "But if you're alive, then why didn't you go back to Konoha?" Aoi was perplexed as to why he hadn't returned. As the heir to the Senju clan and the son of the fourth Hokage, Naruto was now regarded as a great hero in Konoha and would almost certainly succeed there. Aoi was shocked by Naruto's serious response, "Because of people like you. Why'd you steal Uncle Tobirama's sword?" "Because I was tired of the life I was living. I was considered an average jonin with nothing special," Aoi screamed. Naruto gave a small applause and remarked cynically, "Wow, good reason, I am inspired." "What the fuck happened? He's changed so drastically, holy shish." Aoi was shocked to see how different this Naruto was from the one he had encountered in Konoha. Naruto questioned, "And you thought Idate wanted the same thing?" "Of course," said Aoi. "A child who just wanted to become a chunin to prove to everyone in the home that he loved that he was capable of being one, to prove that he wasn't just some no-talented kid? Was the path you lead him down really going to prove such a thing? Especially since he was considered a pathetic spineless traitor by all he knew and loved in the process?" replied Naruto. Aoi's eyes were wide as she gazed at the blonde. "Why am I even asking? People like you do what they do only for themselves." Aoi said, "You don't understand, you're right. How about I try? I feel pathetic, useless. The sword of the great second will bring me respect to all those in the elemental nations." You know that Kid Idate wanted to be a chunin that he'd do anything to prove himself, so how about he steals the sword for me, let him do all the dirty work for my own personal gain. Naruto then took the sword belonging to his deceased uncle. "Now I have the sword, and now people will recognize me as Aoi Rokusho, the man who holds the Raijin no Ken, but is also another missing nin among thousands. I'll take Idate with me. Oh, and look at this. Ibiki Morino is chasing us just to get his little brother back. Well, we can't have that. Here you go, aim.nin. I figured you'd like to have this bald bastard and learn his secrets. Go ahead, torture him, oh the kid? Nah, I'm sure he's fine seeing his big brother get tortured. Idate doesn't look so good, oh well, what do I care? He's just a kid, and besides I don't even have a brother. It'd be a waste to even try and understand him. After all, I have what I wanted. So screw Konoha and all those who were there for me." Aoi blurted out, That's not true, as tears began to well up in his eyes. As Naruto roared and pushed his grandfather's sword to the side, causing it to shoot lightning and strike trees, causing them to burst into flames, he exclaimed, Is it? The moment you stole this blade, you not only said fuck Konoha, but fuck you to those who loved you, supported you, and accepted you for who you are. That's what you guys don't realize. You cave into one selfish thing without thinking of those who actually showed you love, kindness, and affection, and soon enough you become the one thing that not only they despise but you deeply inside your heart as well. And for what? A fucking sword that you can't even wield properly. Newsflash, nobody gives a fuck. Naruto roared. Gazing at the fire, Aoi considered his possessions and his actions thus far. Then Aoi began to cry, shedding tears of self-loathing, grief, and shame. Aoi looked down at the ground in shame and said, You're right. You're absolutely right, Naruto. I've done so much wrong onto not only myself, but also Idate. He's a lot like you in a way. I know. That's why I want to help him. With enough help and support he can reach his goal and beyond, said Naruto. Aoi began crying uncontrollably as she said, I think if you were there for him when he needed someone, I know that you too would have found what you not only wanted, but also needed. This world would be better off without me. Aoi replied. Naruto did not respond, he simply stood silent. As he prepared Shokin, Naruto simply nodded and said, Kill me, please. Aoi gave Naruto a startled look as he asked, Do I earn it? Aoi kept staring at Naruto before closing his eyes and grinning down at him. Do I earn your blessing to take Idate? He asked. Yes, please take him and give him a better life, one I could never give him, Aoi replied. As he prepared to hit Aoi in the heart, Naruto nodded. And Naruto? Naruto turned to face Aoi. Please don't make the same mistake as I, Aoi replied. Naruto merely gave a pitying smile. Trust me. I'll go back soon when I am strong enough. Believe it, Naruto replied. Aoi gave a nod. After saying, and please, tell Idate I am sorry for all that I have done to him and that I truly did care for him as if he were my own little brother, Aoi closed his eyes and prepared to die. Before killing the green-haired former Konoha Jonin by thrusting Shokin directly into Aoi's heart, Naruto uttered the words, will do. Zabuza, Raiga, and the others on the upper level heard everything Naruto said to Aoi. Your friend knows how to break a man, huh? Replied Raiga. Impressed by Naruto's work, Zabuza remarked, he's pretty talented isn't he? Raiga replied, yes. After hearing everything, the voice from earlier began to show respect for this Hashi. The voicekeeper thought, it's like he understands almost everyone. Close enough to hear some of the rumors that two cloaked beings were hiding behind a tree, but far enough away from the cloaked fighters. Upon turning, the taller of the two noticed that the other was in tears. Idate? The taller one asked, referring to the shorter one's current name. Idate mumbled the name of his now deceased sensei, sobbing as he said it, Aoi sensei. With lightning chakra, Raiga swiftly directed his twin blades toward Zabuza and the other Akatsuki, causing lightning to flow around the swords. As the twin swords fired multiple thunderbolts at the Akatsuki members, Raiga declared his just you, Reiso. Ikazuki no Utage. Lightning Burial. Banquet of Lightning. Raiga had the ideal opportunity to leap to the lower level of the cliff and charge lightning chakra into his twin blades when Zabuza, Haku, Fu, and Karen leapt out of the way. A ball of lightning materialized at the tips of Raiga's swords as he pointed them at Naruto. Raiga called out the name of his jutsu as it blasted toward Naruto, Raikyu, Lightning Ball. Before putting Shokin in a blocking position, Naruto merely stood there for a short while with a serious expression on his face. Raiga began to laugh as the jutsu struck. Raiga grinned and remarked, well, that was a bit of a disappointment. That enigmatic voice said, Raiga, he's still alive. What? How? Raiga exclaimed in surprise. As a massive upward slash composed of pure lightning chakra approached Raiga, Naruto's voice reverberated, Doraibu. Drive. Just before the chakra slash could reach him, Raiga leapt out of the way. When Raiga turned to look behind her, she saw that the slash had sliced into the side of the cliff before exploding, creating a massive hole. Raiga's eyes were wide with fear and wonder as she gazed at the hole. Raiga then turned to see Hashi no Shi, who was now wearing a demon mask, glaring at him while his broadsword was blazing with lightning. That's the amazing accomplishment I mentioned earlier. Who is this guy? Raiga thought in disbelief. What in the world was that? His sword, it absorbed the power of the lightning ball and then used its lightning chakra as its own attack, the speaker said. But that's impossible. The only sword I know that could absorb lightning chakra is the Raijin no Ken, but I never heard of it ricocheting the attack back at its opponent, especially with an attack with such magnitude. Raiga replied while looking at the demon. Masked swordsman Hashi gave Raiga a fierce look before using his wind chakra control to accelerate towards him. The voice called out to the green-haired man, Raiga, and he snapped out of his reverie. Raiga swiftly used his twin blades to intercept Shokin, but the force of the blow sent Raiga skidding back. Raiga's eyes widened as Hashi asked, "Who's the kid?" "I got good hearing. I know about your little trick. Too bad you don't know mine." "Kit?" Mamoru leapt out of Hashi's cloak and onto Raiga's face just in time, causing the swordsman to scream and become distracted as the fox kid bit and scratched his face. Taking advantage of the circumstances, Hashi was about to stab Raiga in the heart with one of his father's shuriken when a well-known jutsu stopped him. Lee yelled the name of his jutsu, Dynamic Entry, as he kicked Raiga in the side, sending him flying to the side. Mamoru leapt from Raiga as fast as he could before being launched into the air and landing beside Naruto. Before he could land, Raiga swiftly caught himself in the air. "Hashi-kun, I am here to help," Lee exclaimed, sounding very young. Hashi said, "Thanks Lee." His mask made it impossible to see his sweaty expression. Hashi got something from Mamoru. Hashi replied, "You're right." Hashi thought, "I have to get this done quickly." Lee was reluctant to leave Hashi's side, but he said, "Lee, meet with my sister, she can guide you to Karashi. I can deal with Raiga, trust me." Hashi successfully convinced Lee, getting a nod from the green-clad ninja before he disappeared. "Karashi doesn't belong here. He needs to be back with his mother ASAP. The longer he stays here the more trouble he'll be put into." Then Lee materialized in front of Karen and Aika. "Excuse me Aika-chan, but Hashi told me." "Aika." Karen pointed to the tree where she felt the 2 chakra signatures and said, "Karashi is behind that tree along with Idate Morino, be gentle with the latter." Lee bowed and said, "Arigato Aika-chan." He then disappeared, moving in the direction she indicated. Concerned for her surrogate brother, Aika, Karen questioned, "By the way, why aren't we helping Naruto?" "Tetsuo." Zabuza said, "We just get in his way, trust me, okay?" And Aika. Karen nodded in understanding. Hashi was communicating a plan idea to Mamoru via their mental connection in the meantime. Mamoru began to run after nodding. As he prepared to kill the fox kid, Raiga remarked, "He's sending a fox kid to do his dirty work. How pathetic, I guess I won't cry at his funeral." Suddenly, the kid burst into golden flames and began rolling quickly until he was a massive wheel of fire. Raiga's eyes went wide with surprise at this, and he leapt away from the assault, only to follow Hashi's instructions. The green-haired swordsman's cloak exploded with a huge zip. Up bag as Hashi swiftly materialized behind Raiga and kicked the hunch of his back. "Raiga!" A voice shouted from the rear. Raiga yelled, "Renmara!" as he watched Hashi grab the bag and sling it over his shoulder. Raiga shouted, "You bastard! Give him back!" as he lunged toward Hashi, his twin blades poised for action. After putting Shokin back on his back, Hashi used his wind chakra to charge at Raiga at breakneck speed and deliver a powerful elbow blow to Raiga's stomach. Raiga felt such excruciating pain that he spat out saliva. "Raiga!" The voice cried out once more as Hashi backfisted Raiga, grabbed his head, kneed him in the bridge of his nose, breaking it, slapped him in the face several times, then butted him in the face once more, breaking his nose even more and causing it to bleed. Finally, he thrust a chop into Raiga's chest, causing him to cough up blood. Raiga held his chest, experiencing the excruciating pain, and staggered back. Raiga glared at Hashi, fumbling his words out of pain. "Y.uf. Filthy little r.rat." Hashi said as he vanished from view, "I ain't a rat." With glowing red eyes, he appeared behind Raiga and declared, "I'm a demon." The Kiri.nin began to perspire in terror. Then Hashi created a recognizable spiraling ball of blue chakra. The voice yelled, "Stop," to draw the attention of the other Akatsuki members. As the swordsman turned around and sent Raiga flying over a cliff, Hashi thrust his Rasengan directly into Raiga's stomach, saying, "Too late now." As the rest of his team materialized beside him, Hashi remarked, "Well, that takes care of that." Hana. Fu inquired, "What's inside the bag?" As Mamoru returned to his side, Hashi. Naruto said, "Raiga's eyes." He then gently placed the bag on the ground. Naruto then unzipped the bag to reveal a young boy wearing his straw hat and lower half mask. The boy had red eyes and chin-length purple hair that was parted in the middle, giving him a somewhat feminine appearance. He had a sash around his waist, dark pants, sandals, and a light purple shirt with black stripes on both sides. Tetsuo. Zabuza raised a non-existent eyebrow and asked, Agaki? With one arm resting on his crouching knee and the other cupping his cheek, Hashi asked rhetorically, so, it was you who was assisting Raiga during our battle, am I correct? Yes, that's how it's always been for me and Raiga. We've always been together, ever since he found me. The child replied. People from my own village spied on Kirigakure, so Raiga and his team of Anbu had come to find and kill them. He just killed people at random, but he cried for them as he took their life. Deep within his heart he searched meaning in life. He and I are the same, we felt that living was painful, trying to find the meaning in our lives. My illness forced me indoors, shunned by everyone, all I could do was peer out of the world from under a blanket. I felt that it would be okay to die from Raiga's hands since I felt that he could clean some meaning behind the thing we call life, but instead of taking my life, Raiga took me with him saying that from then on we would become one. On that day I became Raiga's eyes and ears and Raiga became my hands and feet. The outside world that we dashed into was filled with things that I saw and heard, and for the first time in my life, it was so much fun. Wherever and whenever I was with Raiga, nothing else mattered. We were never apart. We were trying to find the meaning in our lives by living for each other. We were convinced that we found the answer. Naruto looked at the kid with sad eyes along with the rest of his team, minus Zabuza. The eyes of Naruto, Haku, and Zabuza widened at these incredibly familiar words. That's why, if Raiga is gone, I've no reason to live. Without him I'd have no purpose in this world. No cause to exist. The boy said, there's no need for me to be here any longer. Naruto said, don't talk like that. Go on. Why do you hesitate? My arms and legs are crippled. I'm powerless to resist you. The kid replied. Naruto simply gave the child a stern look. With tears streaming from her eyes, Haku covered her mouth and said, you have a mission to carry out, don't you? Well, hurry up and finish it. It seemed as though she was looking into a mirror of the past, and she didn't like what she saw. Then Naruto raised his fist and swiftly lowered it. Haku shouted the boy's name, Naruto, and made a series of hand gestures, but Naruto's fist stopped just above the boy's forehead. Then Naruto opened his fist and touched the boy's head. The young boy blinked in shock as Naruto said, Baka. You shouldn't give up so easily when there is always hope around the corner. You gonna turn me into a pincushion again, Haku-chan? Naruto asked, grinning at the brunette as Mamoru stood in front of him in his Kyuubi mode, defending him, and Ice Senbon surrounded the young scarred blonde. Zabuza, Karen, and Fu were taken aback by Haku's willingness to attack her teammate, and the one for whom she had feelings. In order to save a boy she had only known for 5 minutes. Before Haku released her jutsu and allowed the ice to transform into water that spilled onto the ground, the purple-haired boy simply gazed at her in astonished amazement. With sincere eyes that were still welling with tears, Haku said, I'm sorry Naruto-kun. Naruto nodded as Shokin vanished into the seal. He then took Mamoru and placed him in the pouch inside his cloak before grabbing the boy's bag and strapping it to his back. As he left with his team in tow, Naruto said, come on. Inside a tiny, deserted house, Naruto had completed tying the boy to a pole. I'm sorry to do this, but in your kind of situation you are only dangerous to yourself, and I can't let that happen. Naruto replied. The boy simply did not respond to him. Naruto got up and was about to leave when the child interrupted, saying, we'll return, I promise. Naruto stopped in his tracks when the boy said, why are you doing this? I'm your enemy, so why do you wish to help me? With everyone watching him, Naruto stood motionless. Naruto asked, you know what my sword means, correct? And the boy nodded. He didn't need to see it to know the young child understood. Everyone stared at him in shock as he said, I wish to redeem the world, but sadly I feel I can never redeem myself. Haku was surprised to hear him say, when I was younger I failed in saving someone who was precious to me. She knew he meant her. Even though I was blessed to have her come back to me, I still feel as if I was still at fault for what had happened, and no words from friends or comrades could make me think otherwise, but with you, I feel that, I can be redeemed. Naruto said to Haku and the boy. As he left with Zabuza, Fu, and Karen, Naruto said, I apologize if it sounds selfish, but you are now considered important to me, and I cannot let anything bad happen to you. Haku remained behind, her eyes still watering from the words. Then Haku turned to face the child, knelt in front of him, and began styling his hair. The child looked up at Haku in disbelief as she said, I promise we will come back for you, and if they think otherwise, I'll come back. She smiled genuinely and said, I promise. The boy thought he would only see that kind of smile in Raiga, but when he looked at her, He saw that she had a smile of complete understanding. After Naruto closed the door and applied a chakra seal, Haku got up and left. With pity for the boy, Haku questioned, "Is that really necessary?" Naruto said, "He's like you in more ways than one, Haku. I can't take the chance." The brunette nodded sadly. The 5 members of Akatsuki then began to run toward the village to check on the Konoha.nin and the villagers. "Talk about freaking deja vu," Naruto said in a low voice. Zabuza heard him and said, "Shut up." While Hashi and company were racing down a mountain, they noticed Karashi and several villagers waving at them. Hashi. Naruto narrowed his eyes and thought, something's not right, and when rocks fell upon them, he received his response. As the boulders fell upon them, Hashi thought, "That little bastard." The rest of the Kursuki family joined Karashi in cheering. "Karashi!" the boy exclaimed, turning to face Lee and the other Konoha.nin. Akiko watched in horror as he said, "What have you done? I thought our talk changed you." Lee, listen, they were monsters, especially that Hashi guy," Karashi responded. Sakura yelled, "Hashi saved Akiko from being raped and helped save a child. You're the monster here, you bastard," as green chakra glowed around her trembling fists. Sakura began to walk Karashi, her fists trembling with rage and suddenly bursting with green fire. Karashi began to back away from the frightful girl with the pink hair, but his back struck something, causing him to start perspiring with fear. When Karashi slowly turned around, he saw Hashi wearing a demon mask and staring at him through bandaged, red, glowing eyes. The realization that Hashi was still alive made Karashi scream in terror. Hashi lifted Karashi off the ground by grabbing his face with his hand. "I absolutely despise boulders falling atop of me," Hashi replied. Please. Let me go. I'll do anything," cried Karashi. With his bandaged, red, glowing eyes still fixed on Karashi, Hashi slammed him to the ground and raised him back up. As he began pulling Karashi away, Hashi remarked, "Nothing you do will make it up to us, at least not with how you are now." Hashi.kun. What are you going to do with Karashi? Lee questioned, worried about Karashi. As the other members of Hashi's team suddenly materialized, Hashi simply shushed away with Karashi. Lee shouted the name of his old friend, Karashi, but Kaya, Haku stopped him. "Please, Lee.kun, let Hashi be, he shall help Karashi become himself again," said Kaya, Haku. Tetsuo. Zabuza remarked, knowing the kid, "It won't be pretty though." Whatever Hashi had in store for Karashi, Lee had to stop it. Lee yelled, "I'm coming, Karashi," as he prepared to pursue him and Hashi, but Tetsuo blocked his path. "Sorry kid, but whatever Hashi has planned for him may not be pretty, but it'll help," said Tetsuo or Zabuza. "I'm sorry, I do not mean to sound as if I don't trust Hashi.kun, but Karashi isn't strong enough to deal with anything Hashi can deliver upon him. Please get out of my way," Lee yelled. Tetsuo said, "Sorry kid, but I ain't letting you through." Tetsuo. Zabuza just stared at Lee as he assumed his Guken stance, but the hooded masked shinobi sensed an attack. Just in time to avoid being slashed by a Tekokage. Those long ninja claw weapons, Tetsuo. Zabuza ducked to the side. While Tetsuo was occupied, Lee seized the opportunity to pursue Hashi and Karashi. Tenten called his name, Lee. Neji pursued his friend because he didn't want him to do something foolish like he usually does. The remaining members of the Kursuki family surrounded the others in an attempt to appear menacing, but they knew that intimidating the enemy shinobis they were up against would require more than just appearances and weapons. Sakura stood protectively in front of the orange-haired girl and said, "Get behind me, Akiko." "Let's shred him," exclaimed one of the Kursuki members. With their Tekokages ready, the Kursuki members began constructing towers with 3 people each. The members all exclaimed, "Kuro Tatsumaki, Black Tornado," as they began spinning quickly while holding out their Tekokages, giving the impression that, well, whatever jutsu they were calling out, a black tornado was present, and that anyone could be torn to pieces with a single touch. As the deadly tornadoes approached, Sasuke remained motionless. Sasuke used his thumb to partially unsheath his sword and remarked, "Pathetic scum." As the Kursuki family stopped their jutsu, the young Uchiha abruptly disappeared and then reappeared apart from the others. Suddenly, blood spurted from their bodies as they all fell to the ground. The members of Akatsuki were astounded and in awe of Sasuke's recent accomplishment. He was unquestionably just as strong as Naruto. Sakura said, "Thank Kami that's over." Fearing that Hashi would be beaten, Tenten said, "Lee and Neji went after Hashi, we have to stop them." "I'm more worried for those two. Hashi isn't one to be messed with, trust me," said Hana or Fu. You guys ever heard of Shuichi? Yeah, he was considered one of the strongest shinobi in not only Auto, but in the shinobi world as well. Or at least until some mysterious shinobi killed him, Tenten replied. Hana. Fu replied, that alluring shinobi was Hashi. The news caused Tenten, Sakura, and Akiko's eyes to widen in disbelief. But Sasuke arched an eyebrow in curiosity. And he did it while Shuichi wore some special armor created by Dodo Kazuhana, and it was also back before Hashi created Shokin and only used a trench knife. Tenten, Sakura, and Akiko were astounded by Hashi's strength, and Sasuke was so intrigued that he wanted to fight Hashi to find out how strong he actually was. Tenten screamed in terror, "We have to save Lee and Neji," as she attempted to locate her friends and teammates, but Kaya. Haku intervened. Kaya. Haku stated, Hashi.kun will not kill them. Tenten remarked, but he'll still hurt them. If he has to, but trust me, Hashi may be dangerous, but he's not a monster. He's trustworthy and kind, so your friends will be safe, said Kaya. Haku. You have nothing to worry about, but
That's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed this great story. See you in the next one.